stepped down, and I think the term, Alison, is we were duly notified by the electoral office. Is that right? That Councillor Barton was the UUP representative coming forward to replace Bert. So you're very, very welcome, Rosemary. And maybe I see some members indicating, so we'll be brief about this. But Rosemary, do you want to say anything first off yourself, maybe?
Thank you very much for the welcome here this evening. And looking around the council chamber, there are quite a few familiar faces to me from 6-7 years ago. Yeah. And indeed, I look forward to working with everybody again for the betterment of everybody in Fermanagh and Omagh Council.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'm going to come quickly to Alan, then Victor.
Well, thank you, Chair. And like yourself, I would like to extend a hearty welcome to Councillor Barton, Rosemary here. We are delighted with the Ulster Unionist Party that she has been brave enough to come forward and join our ranks in Mid-Tyrone. And we look forward to working with her. I asked her earlier here, just privately, will she be an international councillor like our past colleague, you know, taking on the role of, and she said she wasn't so sure about that. And I says, well, I'm a very willing councillor. If you want to do it, I'm willing to let you. And so, Rosemary, every good wish to working here amongst the councillors of Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. And thank you, Chair.
No problem. And Councillor Warrington?
Yeah, well, obviously, just to second what already has been said, obviously, this is Rosemary's second time around in council, having went to the higher levels of Stormont for a while. Now she's back slumming it with us boys and girls. But anyway, just to some housekeeping, I would like to inform the council that Rosemary will be taking all Bert's existing committees, with the exception of the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association and Veterans Champion, which will be going to Councillor Robert Irvine. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. Just like to welcome Rosemary back in. Councillor Barton, you're very welcome back on behalf of the DUP. It's great to be working with you again, Rosemary. We've worked a long time together, so it's good to be back in. Wish you all the best.
Yeah. And Councillor Blake?
Yeah, also follow up with a welcome to Rosemary. We've known each other a couple of years, so delighted to see you welcome you to slumming it with the rest of us here. Okay. So look forward to working with you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And Correspondence Green?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to officially, I've already done it unofficially, welcome Rosemary back to the council chamber. Bert, her predecessor, was a great advocate of the farming industry within the council on our agriculture liaison group. I don't think it was there when Rosemary was here previously, but it was formed to try and give some credence to the farming industry within our council area, and I would hope and I'd know that Rosemary will continue on Bert's good work in that group. So welcome back, Rosemary.
Okay. Thanks, members, then, for your comments variously, and we'll move now till the next pre-agenda item that we're going to discuss. I'm going to afford Councillor Blake an opportunity to make a small family-related statement. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for letting me in. No, it was just after my mum's recent passing that I just wanted to put on record my thanks to the council and to the many councillors who passed on regards. It was a great source of comfort for me and for my family when to see so many of you that came to the wake house in Ballycassidy and to the funeral as well. It was a great source of comfort, and I really thank you so much, because it really helped through some dark days there. It was a very difficult period, and it was nice to see it gives that great comfort. So thank you to everyone.
It's very nice, Paul. Thanks very much. And we will see, I'm going to now welcome as well to our meeting Jay Basra, who is here in association with Councillor Matthew Bell. You're very welcome, Jay. And any spoken contributions you make will be restricted to 10 minutes. I'm only joking, by the way. You know the rules, but thanks, Jay, for coming along. And understand too that members of Fermanagh and Omagh Youth Voice, a group that the council and the EA are working closely with, that they are tuning in tonight virtually as well, you know, to see the workings of their local government authority monthly meeting. So I'll leave that at that. I have had some requests for any urgent relevant business. Councillor McAleer later on and Councillor Coyle, if he doesn't get to his matter. I'm looking for blank faces, see if anybody else contacted me, but I don't think they did. No, they didn't. Okay, so that's that. Now, members, moving on. First item on the agenda is apologies, and I'll go Aaron Turch to Correspondence Tomás McGear on behalf of the Sinn Féin Party.
Guramagat Carly, thank you, Chair. To Leshgalawan on Group of Sinn Féin and V Shaw, Correspondence Patrick Withers, by Birch Elamal. There will be two other late, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Kelly. And I believe Councillor Debbie Coyle is on her way. Guramagat Carly.
And then Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair, and no apologies from the Unionist Party tonight. Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Robinson. Sorry, I've got you maybe the wrong one, have I? Stevenson. Sorry, that one there? Yeah, sorry.
And you, Chair, you're right now. No apologies, Councillor Elliott will be yet join us. It'll be after 8 o'clock.
Okay. And then have we Councillor Garrity online, please, Mary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. One apology from ourselves, Councillor Garv McPhillips, and also just personally to say welcome back to Rosemary and wish her all the best back in the fold again. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mary. And we have an apology from Councillor Deehan, and I'll ask maybe Stephen or others online on the WebEx if there are any other apologies from smaller parties and independents. I think they're all in. That's good. No apologies as such. So the next item, members, then item 2 on the agenda is to confirm and sign the minutes of the council meeting held on the 1st of November 2022. Okay. Now that's a document which runs to 16 pages. So I'll be dealing with matters arising shortly. But for now, then I just take a proposer, I think. Okay. Oh, sorry. Page by page accuracy. We'll go through the 16 pages then. Okay. For accuracy only. Okay. Not for matters arising. Page 1. Page 2. 3. 4 and 5. 6 and 7. 8 and 9. 10 and 11. 12 and 13. 14, 15, 16. So do I have a proposer? Councillor Warrington and Councillor Errol Thompson, please. First and second there. Thanks very much. And that's agreed, members. So moving on then to confirm and sign the minutes of the special council meeting held on the 17th of November. That was Thursday, wasn't it? Thursday, 17th of November. And there would be 8 pages there. Okay, so I'll go to page 1, accuracy only. Okay, Councillor Thompson, need you put on your light there, please.
If I'm right, it's just the date and time. It says here Monday the 17th of November.
Okay, thanks.
For accuracy. Just,
Spot it.
okay.
Thank you. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. 5. 6. 7. And 8. So obviously then I'll seek a proposer and a seconder for the accuracy. Okay, Councillor Robinson and Councillor Blake, caught my eye first. Okay. Thank you for that. And moving on now, are there any declarations of interest, members? Item 4 on the agenda. I don't think there are any going to be listed here. Okay, there are no declarations. Sorry, Councillor Coyle.
Yes, Chair. The motion around the 14, I think it is. Sorry, how long did I get? Yeah, 14.2. I was going to propose it, but since I'm a farmer, it may be a financial benefit. So I'll just declare an interest, but I will be speaking on it. Thank you.
Okay, and I know this is something you're wanting to speak on, Councillor Green.
Just to say that in the last mandate, that was resolved when a QC informed the council that farmers who were councillors could certainly speak on farming issues as long as they weren't receiving anything else that other farmers were getting. It wouldn't be seen as a conflict of interest. In fact, if you're elected in a farming area, it would be neglect of you not to bring these things to the chamber, just as if we're all allowed to talk on issues around benefits and all sorts of things like that, even though I'm sure most of us has people within our families that's on benefits. So that's what we're elected for. But just to make that clear, that shouldn't be a reason to declare an interest. If you're a farmer, we're all the farmers is here is working on behalf of the people that elected them. So I would suggest that isn't a conflict of interest. But it's up to everybody to make up their own mind, I suppose.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Green. And Councillor Feely, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just briefly, just exactly what Seamus has said. I remember this coming up the last time too, because when Brendan Haley was the chief executive and we did discussion about it. So I'd agree with Seamus there, and I'm not going to declare an interest, even though I am a farmer. I'll be talking about it as well. Thanks, Barrett.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Councillor Donnelly, Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Just a minor point, Chair. I was in attendance at that meeting and I'm not listed just on the minutes. I'm not sure if anyone else is missing there either, but.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to double check on that, Anne-Marie, I'll come to Alison for a wee second, if you didn't mind, Alison. Is Anne-Marie the council meeting of the 1st or the 17th? Which is it, Anne-Marie?
17th.
The 17th. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. We're about to move on in relation to the declarations of interest. Your point has been heard, Seamus. You know, and notwithstanding that, I'm operating on the presumption that Bernice is the proposer, will be the proposer, Councillor Swift. Okay, so moving on to matters arising, and this is the council meeting of the 1st of November, and we'll go through that then page by page for matters arising. Okay, I'll keep an eye on WebEx and I'll keep an eye on the chamber. Okay, so page 1. Page 2. Okay, over to yourself, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Just page 2 to draw members' attention to the correspondence from Libraries NI. We had sought an update regarding 5 Mile Town Library. So in summary, the Chief Executive has advised that they hope to be in a position for construction work to be underway once again in April, May of 2023, and the reasons for the delay are set out in the letter. So just a proposer and seconder for noting, please, Chair.
Okay, I'll ask Paul to note it, but I know he wants to make a substantive point as well. Councillor Robinson.
Post noted, but it's disappointing it's taken so long to get this sorted out in Hymel Town. And is there anything we can do to put across? It's just an eyesore on the main street. Whenever you come out of the Valley Hotel there, visitors coming out and tourists coming out looking into this, where the old site was. Can they put anything along the front of that, the fence or anything like that there, Alison? Can we write back and ask them, can they do something for it?
Okay, we'll take that as a proposal that we write accordingly,
Yeah.
as you've outlined.
So.
Councillor Robinson, thank you. Moving on now to Councillor Green.
Yeah, I'll second that. No, I just want to welcome it, even though there has been a delay on it. But at least we've got a start date on it, so it has to be welcomed.
Okay, thank you. So that's proposed and seconded and agreed that course of action about environmental enhancement in the meantime. Okay, thank you. So that's page 2. Page 3. I'll go to Councillor Garrity. Mary,
Thank
do you
you,
want
Chair.
in on this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
thank you, Mary.
trouble unmuting there. Just at the end of page 2, Barry, apologies. I just see congratulations, and I have a slight conflict of interest, but I think it'd be remiss of me, it might have been missed by some of the members, to congratulate Southwest College, who are going on now to the Trench Cup, the one an All-Ireland League final last week up on a very impressive Rosslea field, which I haven't been in a long time, and it is spectacular. So just because I know we had Celine as one of our directors as well, so just congratulations to the college and everybody that played a role in it. And we actually had former councillor Barry Doherty on part of the stats team as well, so congratulations to him, as I would known him personally in the past. Thanks, Chair.
You weren't on the line yourself, Mary?
I may have threw in a ball or two.
You're good and fair play. Thank you, Mary. That's first class. Congratulations then to the college, of course. And page 3, members, Councillor McAleer, Correspondence McAleer.
Yeah, no, just and I appreciate you noted this as a motion or a proposal I was bringing under any other business. I wonder maybe if I could squeeze it in, save a bit of time.
Emma, we go. Thank you.
And first off, I suppose declaring an interest as an employee of Southwest College, but absolutely congratulations to them and the linking with Fermanagh GIA. It's a fantastic achievement, and some of the big names they beat on the way to winning that competition can only be commended. But yeah, again, it was an achievement by a local resident within my own DA of Mid Tyrone, and you'll know him yourself, Chair, Caelan McDonald, better known probably as Caelan Joe to many, who appeared on the Late Late Toy Show last November the 25th, Friday, November the 25th. A big achievement, obviously a fairly prestigious show, north and south, and indeed globally by the Irish diaspora. But just really to acknowledge that as an achievement from a young man within our own DEA, within our own council area. Country music, I suppose, wouldn't be my genre, but I suppose I would challenge anyone to say that Country Roads isn't a tune and isn't worth celebrating. But definitely that achievement, something worth noting, Chair, and possibly if I could propose that the Chair or the Council would maybe send a letter or send some sort of acknowledgement just to Caelan Joe on his achievements to date at such a young age. I seen recently there that he was, I think, number 1, number 2, and number 3 in the country chart ahead of the likes of Johnny Cash. So that's no mean feat while you're at it too, at all the age he is. So thanks for that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Emmett. Moving now to Sean Clark, Councillor Clark, Correspondence Cleary.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Barry. I actually know Caelan Joe too, so I want to be associated with the remarks. You know, he's deserving of a good letter, and I'm sure you agree too, because you probably know him in your circles as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Barry.
Thanks to Emmett and Sean, and we'll think of appropriate recognition. Okay, thank you very much. So page 3 then, just take down your hands, both councillors there who spoke more recently, please. And then we'll move through page 3, page 4, page 5, then page 6. Yourself, Alison?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to the resolution of the adoption of the motion and to refer members to the correspondence received from the Permanent Secretary of the Executive Office. And it's really just setting out the commitments that were made in the New Decade, New Approach regarding the Independent Environmental Protection Agency. And the Permanent Secretary advises of the, I suppose, those commitments, and also advising that no decisions can be taken in the absence of ministers and the Assembly is recalled.
Okay. Corlearo Coffee? Donald, maybe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry. I'm happy to propose to note this correspondence, although it is again, as usual, woefully inadequate. We have the reference here is from our motion is for an independent EPA, which is certainly needed
I think there was a revelation in an article recently around the failure to regulate effectively, for example, the discharge of sewage into waters by Northern Ireland Water Agency and by the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. And it's no huge surprise that this is the situation, as they're not independent. However, in the response given here, there is, I believe, a purposeful confusion over the issue of climate change and perhaps the Environmental Protection Agency, which would have a much wider remit than simply worrying about, as big an issue as it is, the climate change concern. Because while they're talking about, the Climate Change Act may establish a commission to oversee actions to reduce emissions of carbon dioxide and methane, it does not necessarily condition, regulate activities such as those of polluting water, soil, or air with other forms of contaminants. So this really misses the point of what we'd written and of our motion. And considering this is coming from the Executive Office, which effectively could be, guiding government into the future if there is a reconstitution of the Executive in the future, as it now appears increasingly likely, this is genuinely concerning. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Donald. So that's page 7. I need a seconder to note if at all possible. Okay, thanks. I'm studying my head here as to whether Paul Stevenson pipped Mark Buchanan by a millisecond. I think he did. Paul Stevenson, put him down, please. Mark, you missed out. But the reflexes are good. Okay, so that's that. Thank you, Donald. Page 8. Okay, Alison.
Again, just at the bottom of page 8, Chair, the resolution of the adoption of the motion regarding ROMPs and the legislation, a response from the Permanent Secretary noting the Council's comments, but indicating her view that local government is best placed to take this work forward, but acknowledging that legislative changes are required to facilitate this process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer, Correspondence McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll start by proposing to note, but again, like the last speaker said there, this is again a bit of a bluff in terms of what's been sent back to us. I'm aware just that this issue has also been raised by Ards and North Down Borough Council, and I would actually propose that we maybe link in with them, because I think they had received fairly similar correspondence, which tries to, I suppose, pass the buck and pass the blame onto it. Like an example in the content of the letter that's before us, it advises Fermanagh and Omagh District Council that ROMPs rest better with local government, yet it gives no justification of why this is the case. And again, motions across our own council, Derry City and Strabane District Council, and as I say, Ards and North Down, articulate valid reasons why DFI should take back responsibility and liability for ROMPs. I suppose referring council to DAERA is, I would view it as something that's quite disingenuous, because DAERA has already confirmed in writing that it has no authority to act against environmental destruction of priority habitats and species that occur within the boundary of historic quarries. And indeed, Minister Poots even wrote that quite an endearing letter lamenting how his officials were hamstrung because of the historic permissions on site. I think just in terms of linking in maybe with Ards and North Down, and again probably Derry City and Strabane District Council, just to see how we do progress this, because I think they need to amend ROMPs legislation within the Planning Act to take account of environmental impact assessment regulations. Is going to further delay the commencement of ROMPs and heighten the risk of liability for the environmental harms being caused. It's something that we really have to step up and proceed, because as has been spoken before, the lack of a functioning government previously and currently, I suppose, is stalling this motion. So I think working with other councils to apply that pressure through similar motions would up that ante. But hopefully we can do this internally, communicating with the other councils, potentially with NILGA as well, but I would suggest maybe with those interested councils at first. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to come to Corrier Coffee in a second, but Chief Executive's going to make a suggestion, I think.
Just to say, Chair, if Councillor McAleer was content maybe in that context of working with other councils, I know this is an area of work that the heads of planning in a number of the councils that Councillor McAleer has mentioned have been doing work on around obviously the legislation, but also the significant burden that it's bringing. And maybe in the first instance, if we could use that group and then perhaps come forward with a collective position paper that could then come through to each of the councils in due course.
Okay. Emmett, do you want to come back in briefly on that?
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair. Yeah, if that's a work that is started or something that's already been undertaken, yeah, I think it would make sense that rather than from starting from scratch, we work through that. So, happy enough to make that amendment to the proposal, Chair.
Thank you. And then Corrier O'Coffey, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second the note and just to echo the points that's been made there. There's obviously a liability and a responsibility that is passed to the council in relation to these historic planning permissions for and the rumps and these quarries and like you just cast your mind back. It was actually one of these quarries that the threat of fracking almost managed to elude the entire planning regime and in the past in Fermanagh. So we definitely need to close down on these loopholes, and we need to make sure that the environmental destruction that is occurring is stopped. I am very happy with the suggestion that we take the lead as councils and through the planning experts that we have on hand, but I wouldn't have much faith in Nilga to do the same. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so that's proposed and seconded and agreed, and we'll have the noting in that as well. Thank you. Okay, moving on, members, to page 9. Then, in terms of matters arising, page 9, page 10, page 11. Okay, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Just the bottom of page 11, again, just in terms of the adoption of the motion, just to advise, we have correspondence then from the Permanent Secretary, Peter May of the Department of Health. This was in relation really to 3 letters, Chair, but the substantive comment is in relation to the motion that was adopted at our last meeting.
Okay. So, I'll just look to WebEx and need a proposer and seconder to note if I could have that. Okay, Councillor Warrington and Councillor Coyle, Deborah and Victor, proposed by Victor, seconded by Deborah, that that is noted. Okay, members, moving on then, page 12 and anything on 12 of your
Yes, Chair.
catch your interest? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just really between the bottom of page 12 and the top of page 13, just to reference the letter from the DFE Permanent Secretary, and this was regarding or in response to the Council's queries regarding mineral licenses and specifically the due diligence and really the validation checks as part of the process. And the Secretary's really referred us just to the link around mineral prospecting, licensing, and also the assessment criteria for each application.
Okay, thank you. And do we need a proposer to note there? Okay, if I can take a proposer to note. Thank you, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Thompson. Okay. Proposed and seconded to note. Okay, moving on then. Page 30.
Just
Although
then.
Councillor McAleer wants in at this juncture. Corrier McGillier. Emmett.
Well, Carlock, yeah, apologies. I'm trying to navigate on the phone here at the minute, from the car park up on Alton Galvin. No, it's just in relation to this particular item. I'm not going to speak too long on it because we have a motion in tonight which deals with some of the points that are raised. But the fact that the reference in this response is to a link that kind of led to me raising the questions with the department in the first instance, because quite explicitly within that link it says the 2 factors are that there are the main factor seem to be overriding that there is the finance and the expertise to carry out the functions associated with the development. So there's no reference there in terms of any ethical guidance, in terms of health and safety breaches or anything like that one would think, and I include in that now fraudulent behaviour in terms of past activities from organisations or directors or members associated with those organisations. None of that seems to have any cognizance in terms of what's been associated here. there is reference there, I suppose, in that final paragraph in terms of the GSNA, and the worrying thing historically with the GSNA is that once companies are invited over here and start, they've been attracted by the PDAC conference annually over in Toronto, at which GSNA and other governmental and statutory bodies go out and sell Ireland's for open for business annually. That these are the people involved in these organisations very often tend to end up going across to the private sector and ending up in high-ranking jobs in the private sector in mineral businesses. So the same people that they use public money to do the research for, to do the hard work and all that, ends up then earning a tidy sum on the side when they go and switch allegiances to those private extractive companies which come in, exploit and extract. So again, there's conflict of interest, I would feel, throughout this process. I think the department, with respect, seems to be turning a blind eye quite willfully to that. But again, as I say, there's a motion coming up later on which will address some of those issues, Chair, so we'll probably speak further on it at that stage. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emmett. Thanks for that. Do I need anything here? Okay, just keep moving then, Alison, through.
Yes, Chair, just to note at the bottom of page 13, then the letter that had been received from the Trust regarding the convening of our emergency meeting. I think we should just note it here, but it was ultimately superseded by the meeting itself on the 17th.
Okay, just a proposer to note then, if you didn't mind. Okay, Councillor Maguire and Councillor Coyle. Down this right-hand side. Okay. Thanks for that. And then page 14 and page 15. Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 15, a response from the Department for Infrastructure. This is in the other correspondence folder, by the way, members. This is just in relation to the review of the business case for the flood alleviation in Omagh. And the Permanent Secretary has just confirmed that, yes, they will be looking at a potential up and downstream impacts upstream and downstream of the proposed works.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to propose this correspondence. This is obviously the issue I raised at our last meeting, and well, couldn't get a more reassuring letter than that. And I look forward to reading whatever report comes out of this. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second Councillor Bell's proposal for noting, and it's to be welcomed at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think everything's to be welcome at the minute, but I suppose that's what exactly is going to happen, because I've met with members of the department there recently, and I know that businesses and everything down around that area, they're still dealing with a large surge of water. They have got their own private pumps in their own businesses. So yes, hopefully we'll see a good outcome.
Okay, Anne-Marie, thank you. That's that matter dealt with. Then page 14, page 15 and page 16. Okay. That's that. Moving on then. Members. Anne-Marie, could you take down your digital hand, please, if you didn't mind? And then we'll move on here till item 6 on the agenda, which is matters arising relating till Thursday, the 17th of November, Earl. Special council meeting, the Thursday, as distinct from the Monday. And so we're going to go through that. Just get me bearings here on the number of pages in that one. So, special council meeting, very important meeting. We're going to go through now for matters arising. Page 1, page 2. Okay, Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 2 there, obviously it in the minutes note, there was a presentation from Neil Gockian, or from the Western Trust in general, part of which included a statement from Neil Gockian in which he acknowledged the position this council had taken in regards to no confidence and calls to resign. This obviously put a lot of pressure on him and on the trust, and I think given the decisions, putting a wee bit of pressure on them is a positive thing, and it's a good thing for our case to try and make the case for our services. I'm sure we'll all agree that's something that we need to do. And I think given further reports in the media around Obbs and Guiney, the continuation of putting pressure on would be good. So what I would like to do, Chair, is I would propose that we write to the 5 Fermanagh and South Tyrone MLAs and ask them, will they support the council and take the same position of no confidence publicly and call on for resignation. Some already have in public meetings stuck their hand up in support, and we all, every party in this council chamber backed it, so I'm sure it won't be that much of a debate, but I'll just make that proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a proposal. I'll just look in the chamber and on WebEx here. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, I'm happy to support that proposal. I think it makes sense. The correspondence, the minutes of his contribution are replete with facts or alleged facts which have subsequently been subject to a degree of scrutiny, which have cast a lot of question marks over it. For example, the reference there to one of the questions I wanted to know whether we had any details back on the cost of the use of private ambulances as are being proposed. My understanding is a private ambulance roundabout cost about 4,000 a day is what I've heard, which seems a lot more than it might cost to maintain a locum consultant on a day. So it kind of raises a lot of questions. Now, I do know on that page they state that money is not an incentive, but on other correspondence before us today, which I will return to, it actually clearly states that money is a consideration. I also note that there's a claim that there are very few patients who needed surgery in less than 4 hours, but then we also hear that there are 5 patients a day, and of course 6 full-time surgeons are employed providing emergency general care surgery along with other activities, and it really does pose question marks over that claim in that context. Finally, the issue of the obstetrics and gynecology is raised here, and it has to be stated that Mr. Guckian, I've listened to it a few times, he actually clearly stated that they had contacted the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology to our council. Subsequently, it transpired that they did not, that they had contacted merely a local lead and potentially an unnamed regional lead. There's also references he made references to the Royal College of Surgeons regional lead. Now, he didn't explain that the regional lead of Royal College of Surgeons that he had consulted was none other than the Mark Taylor, who was also present on the presentation. Mr. Taylor representing the Department for Health at that stage, rather than the Royal College of Surgeons. And of course, Mr. Taylor is also involved in private sector work and stands to be a beneficiary of the move to have the SWA as an elective overnight care hub. So, there's a lot of question marks over the vested interests who are driving this agenda. I know that they're telling us that this is all because they can't recruit or they can't retain staff, but the reality is it's all in line with existing policy set out, and most recently in June in the review of emergency surgery, which stated categorically that surgeons can either do elective or emergency care, but not both. And that alone, if you think about it, is the death knell of any small acute hospital, because any small acute hospital necessarily needs surgeons to do both acute emergency and elective care. So this is all part, and this is the June policy is actually cited in correspondence before us later on. This is part of a planned crisis, and let no crisis go to waste, as the old saying goes. So happy to second the proposal from Councillor Gannon. I also want to raise a further proposal, which is really that, unfortunately, the spokesperson from Savour Acute Services.
Oh, you're way in excess of 3 minutes, but can you make your proposal, please?
Yeah, I will do. I think that we only afforded 5 minutes to, I think, Reginald Ferguson to make his case, and I feel that was completely inadequate. It was quite unfair on the day that, it was a very unbalanced procedure. So, yeah.
We have a letter here from
Oh, you have one, okay.
Ferguson, along them lines. Thank you for your seconding of councillor Gannon's proposal then. I'll go now to other contributors who wish to speak. Correspondence, Christor McCaffrey, Liddahull next. Chris?
Gurmugget, I Caherley is Mail against the Shocking Shin. Thank you, Chair. Well, I would just want to come in and say that we, as a council, we took that decision, obviously, here as members of Fermanagh Minister Council, for each of our constituents that are going to be drastically affected by this terrible decision, which isn't based, as we know, it isn't based on common sense, wasn't based, as we were told, initially wasn't based on any financial pressures, and the excuse for recruitment was the excuse that was used. This is a deliberate attack on Fermanagh. It's a deliberate attack on rural people. I can't see how in the 21st century that such essential needs, medical needs, can be taken away from anyone. So we are, of course, outraged that the trust have decided to do this, especially as it's an unauthorised decision that was taken the second practically that Stormont fell, that the civil servants decided to plough on ahead with this, despite a whole rake of questions not being answered and still haven't been answered, despite multiple excuses being given for their standing. So I do believe that Neil Guckian is not fit for purpose in his role. I think that this has proven there is a disdain within the civil service for rural areas, and again, I would ask questions such as if decisions like these need to be rural proofed, if the Rural Needs Act actually means anything when it comes to these fundamental services being taken from a rural area. Why is Fermanagh always first on the chopping board to lose services? It's only a couple of years ago we faced down other threats to the stroke unit, and we could go on and on back in history about other things. But absolutely, I think it's been heartening to see the amount of people who've come out for these protests recently at this decision. But this is about the future of everyone in Fermanagh, and these services need to be reinstated immediately. So I absolutely believe that Neil Guckian isn't fit for purpose in his role. Thank you.
Okay, councillor McCaffrey. Moving on to councillor John Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. Would it be relevant to bring up my AOB in this part? Just to, I would like to propose that we have an emergency health and social care services subcommittee meeting. I know it is scheduled for next year, which I want that one as well, but from the meeting of the 17th, it has raised a lot more questions, and I think that the trust needs to come to the council and the committee again to field our questions. There is a lot of anger, there's a lot of hurt, and they need to be, they need to be questioned. We do not know a pathway for many patients that are, that are said only a small number would be affected. But we have to make sure that this temporary closure is going to be that is going to be temporary, and it's not going to be a permanent closure, and that's where the council will keep the pressure on the trust. Thank you.
Okay, you have a particular suggestion or proposal about convening the group in an emergency fashion. I do know there's an issue, John, around terms of reference that group, and I would ask Alison to comment.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly we can proceed as requested if that's the wish of the council. I suppose just to note that within our terms of reference, a quorum for the health subcommittee requires the trust to be in attendance. So we would need to have confirmation that they would actually be at the meeting before we could proceed with the arrangements, but just subject to that caveat, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, in light of that, John, are you sticking with your suggestion or proposal? Yep, you are indeed.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to do that, but I think it is in the interest and better relationship again with the council and the trust that they do attend, and I would encourage them to do so.
Okay, so I expect that your proposal will gain a seconder, and just in the current sequence of speakers, it is along these lines here. The next speaker will be Councillor Eamon Keenan, followed by Councillor Paul Blake, followed by Councillor Bernice Swift. Donal, I think you have been in already, but we'll come back to that. So Eamon for now. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, current situation with the South Wales Acute Hospital is not surprising, but just Donal raised an interesting point about Mr. Mark Taylor, who has been given expert who's on the board, due to the fact that he does.
You have very poor reception there, Eamon. We cannot make out the substantive point. So maybe Eamon will come back to you in some way here. Come back to you in the sequence of speakers. Okay. So Eamon, I'll move on briefly till Councillor Blake.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd also second Councillor John Coyle's motion about a proposal that the Trust, but requesting that the Trust will actually meet with the Council in person, and we don't have another attempt by the Western Trust to treat the Council with the disrespect that they did at the meeting on the 17th of November, because I thought it was utterly the approach by the Chief Executive was aggressive and abrasive approach to treating us as councillors was disgraceful. So that if any future meeting was to take place, that it must take place in person, that he takes our questions in person, and that he isn't allowed to shape the narrative by bringing 13 of his colleagues along. Maybe what Councillor Keenan was getting at there was that requesting that Professor Mark Taylor is not allowed to attend, because I have no confidence that he is the person who should be shaping general surgery in this country, considering we've already alluded to his role in private healthcare. So I would have concerns about him. But saying that from now on, if we are to restore the confidence in the Trust, then they need to be more upfront and transparent with us, and we need to see the plan in place for the restoration of emergency general surgery in the SWA. And without that, we will have difficulty in rebuilding that confidence in them. Thanks.
Okay. And your second, Paul, is in the context of a request for a meeting of the health subgroup or a health subcommittee to be constituted. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on now to Councillor Bernice Swift.
Yes, I'm fully supportive of Councillor Coyle's request as member of the Health Subcommittee meeting again, and it's already been said in the past, we cannot afford to be political where health is concerned, and it's in everyone's interest. And assurances were given at the last meeting that we would be communicating openly with each other, so I would be expecting that all will attend within the best interests. The very fact that decisions have been made now, we need to fully understand and be dealing with the facts and the figures that have been mooted, and indeed what's the best way forward. We definitely want to have discussions with all the project leads to discuss this important, very, very important issue with all staff. And again, SWA is needed where it is. And again, we want to be addressing all the staffing challenges, and we want to be collaboratively working together to help ensure that all will be well for all of our citizens. Garmagat.
Okay, thank you. I'll go now to Councillor Seamus Green and then Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the whole issue of healthcare, the Western Trust and whoever's run it just seems to really be against rural and people from rural areas like our own. An example was of a lady who contacted me during the week, and she was requested to go to the Altnagalvin Hospital, hope I'm saying this the right way, for a mammogram to the breast clinic. She went up there and two mobile lorries were parked, units, and she was in 5 minutes and away she went. Now she travelled from near Lisnaskea to for a 5-minute procedure. Now I would have thought that the mobile units surely were called mobile units because they were supposed to be bringing that service out to the people. So just on that issue, I would propose that the council would write to the Western Trust or whoever does this and ask why people from Fermanagh are being asked to go to Derry, to where the breast clinic is, to enter mobile units parked outside the breast unit in Derry. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's actually almost insulting the rural people of Fermanagh and Tyrone that is the case. 2 mobile units parked at Galvin outside the breast unit, and someone has to travel that whole distance to go and 5 minutes in and away. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I would propose that we write on that issue, and I agree with all the other councillors and what has been said already around this.
Thank you. Correspondence, McGill, Councillor McAleer.
Sorry, thank you, Chair, and I'll just take a maybe second on the phone here. Just in relation to that last topic raised by Councillor Green, I'm aware that one of those mobile units was, or I believe still is, based in the car park in Duns in Omagh, but I believe that's only until a date this month in December time. Now, I'd contacted the Western Health and Social Care Trust, try and figure out when it was being moved, if it was being moved, where it was being moved to, obviously because as the county town of Tyrone, it's a service that's highly utilised and highly valued, and it's one that we wouldn't want to be losing, but it's obviously something that the people of Fermanagh need access to as well. So it is, maybe that's something that could be included in the letter proposed by Councillor Green, and with that amendment or with that addition, I'd be happy enough to second this proposal. In relation to, I suppose, the outcome of that meeting, and has been referred to the discussions in the meeting with the trust and with the health department, as I told you there, I'm currently sitting in the car park in Galvin Hospital because of a family matter that I had to attend to today. Now, I've been up here since 11 o'clock this morning, and we came here rather than going to the SPA hospital because obviously from the start of this week there was the withdrawal of emergency services, and it was unknown when we left Cregan this morning whether we would need access to emergency services. You know yourself, Chair, the road from Cregan up to Derry here, we would have been going through Gortin, but the road from Ruski to Gortin is currently undergoing roadworks and it's closed. So that added time onto a journey. And I would use language as strong as the PR people, the spin people, and indeed the lies that were told at that meeting with council when they tried to say to the councillors and to those listening on that when it comes to emergency surgery or emergency action, that time doesn't matter, that distance doesn't matter. Like that's a complete fabrication, and you don't need to have a medical qualification or a medical degree to know that that's completely untrue, and it's actually quite dangerous language to be using, Chair. So I would take issue with, again, some of the points that have been raised in the meeting tonight. The conflict of interest that's quite obviously there from certain members who attended that meeting on behalf of those representatives that were invited in by the council to attend. I think it's quite obvious that the goal here is to diminish and degrade rural health provision to a point where it's no longer sustainable, where it will then be privatised and people will then be charged for access to healthcare. And I don't think that's an exaggeration.
Concluding point, please.
Chair, I would be minded, just if I think it was Councillor Coyle made the initial proposal, or possibly Councillor Gamble, I think it was Councillor Coyle, that it wouldn't just be the Health and Care Subcommittee, that it would actually be a full council meeting, because I think the issues being discussed here are too important to have members excluded from it. I think it's something that's really resonating with the people right across this district, so we would maybe make that as a further proposal. And again, just to be aware, I suppose, going forward, that whenever we invite representatives in, what their conflict of interest, what their alternative interests are actually truly are, whenever we are inviting them in, and what credence we do give them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emmett. Okay, just need to get my bearings here on sequence of speakers. Okay. I'm going to ask Alison to come in now.
Chair, it's just one comment for information in relation to the mobile units, but obviously I know there's a particular course of action proposed, but just to advise, we will be bringing a report to Regeneration and Community next week with a request for the Trust to take up a site at Fermanagh Lakeland Forum for 4 months from February of next year. So perhaps in the correspondence, I know Councillor Green cited a very specific instance and then reference was made to OMA, but maybe we could just actually seek their confirmed programme or proposed dates for the 12 months ahead. But it's really just to alert you that that'll be coming next week for your consideration.
Okay. And just on a procedural point then, Alison, we had a proposal from Councillor Coyle and it was supported in relation to the healthcare subcommittee. Now we've had a suggestion which seems to be gaining traction in the same quarters, you might say. So how do I deal with this? Do I go back to Councillor Coyle?
Well, Chair, there's two approaches. Obviously, you could deal with them as two separate proposals. I would suggest, maybe given your desire to meet with the Trust, I would have thought it was more likely if we have one meeting, and if that's what the Council, I would have thought if we proceed with both a Health Subcommittee and a Council meeting. It's clearly up to matters or members to determine. You could do both, or you could just maybe choose to opt for a Council meeting instead.
Okay. Can I ask Councillor Coyle to give his opinion on this then?
Yeah, look, I wasn't sure if the Trust would come back to a second full council meeting, so that's why I made it as the subgroup. But I am happy either way to have a full council. I don't want to diminish any other councillors out of this discussion because it's too important. So look, I can widen out my proposal to have it as full council, and if that's accepted, fine.
Okay. Okay, if you make that point, Alison, please.
No, thank you, Chair. That's fine. I suppose the only other matter maybe members would be appropriate to deal with just in finalising this proposal. Councillor Blake in his comments has obviously made the suggestion around in-person attendance. I think whether you choose to make that mandatory, so in other words, the meeting won't happen if the Trust don't attend in person, or that you would express the wish that the meeting would convene in person. You just might be limiting your options if we make it a requirement, but emphasise strongly the Council's preference for an in-person engagement. But that, again, up to members to decide.
Okay, I think that's agreed. That's agreed. Okay, so we've agreed on a course of action, and I want to go back now to the sequence of speakers. There are two in the chamber. Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. We're just coming on the back of what Councillor Green was discussing on the breast cancer on the unit. I actually, my own wife actually used it just over a week ago, and she had to go to Craigavon. And again, as Councillor Green alluded to, she was in and out in 5 minutes. And we are aware, obviously, that the one is in Oma, but it is going some stage during this month. So certainly to support the proposals, the fact that they're mobile units, there is no reason why, and I know they certainly have been at the Lakeland Forum in the past. There's no reason why they can't target because obviously it's something that's done routinely for ladies every 3 years or something, and there is no reason why they can't have it in their calendar to have it in somewhere like the Lakeland Forum car park when a certain amount of ladies from Fermanagh are due to have their routine checkup, instead of them having to drive either to Galvin or to Craigavon Area Hospital. It's just another and we've been talking about it all evening. This is a word that was used, has been bandied about for a while. It hasn't been used for a long time, but it sort of raised its head again in the last couple of weeks, and that was dairyisation. Like everything, they want everything in the Northwest. They don't want anything down here, and but I think they've realised by now that they're going to have a fight on their hands with us guys. So just wanted to get that in. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And Seamus, I think seeking a confirmation of the debts would be included in your proposal, isn't that right? Thanks very much. So, Eamon, I'm going to come back to you then, Matthew, and then Rosemary. Eamon, your connection was poor at one point, but you're back.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, indeed, Eamon.
Thanks. I was turning all the devices off in the house there.
Yep.
The old Xbox was going. Well, Councillor Blake was quite right in the direction it was heading. I wanted to speak a wee bit more about Mr. Professor Mark Taylor. I believe he was one of the authors of the actual Bungoa report, which is the roadmap to privatisation, and which all, unfortunately, parties in Stormont supported. He also, I believe, has interest in private healthcare at 352 Private Medical and Kingsbridge in Belfast. He's also the director of the Royal College of Surgeons, who legislate the terms of employment for surgeons. And he's also a member of the Trust, who's now closing the emergency surgery in the SWA. So I think there's massive, massive conflicts of interest. And everywhere you look in the situation, his name's there. And it's no wonder that Mr. Reggie said we don't trust the Trust. And this is one of the best way. And I have actually no confidence in the man to do anything with some public interest in the loop here. And it's more about privatisation, and emotion of no confidence in the expertise of Mr. Mark Taylor because of private interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Keenan. And Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. The first point I want to pick up on was what my colleague, Councillor Warrington, was saying about the Western Trust seemingly focused on Alton Galvin. I suppose as an example of this, there was 4 senior positions for district nursings advertised there 2 months ago or a month ago, possibly. 3 of them were based in Alton Galvin, and the 4th is based in Newton Stewart, which is as close to Alton Galvin as you can get, to be frank. But then on Councillor Green's proposal, if he's up for another amendment, I'd be very interested in if there is a rota for these mobile units, if there is a plan for where they go, because surely one of the great advantages of a mobile unit is the fact that they're mobile. So if he's amenable to that, that'd be great. Thank you, Chair.
Indicated that, yes, that it willing to include that, of course. Yep. And then Councillor Barton.
Thank you very much. Mine's just to follow on with in relation to the breast screening locations for the mobiles. I myself recently attended breast screening in Oma here, but Councillor Warrington talked about his wife attending breast screening in Craigavon. Surely it's imperative that the Western Trust find out where people are living and actually locate them to their nearest breast screening unit. And like Councillor Bell has said, let's have a rota and see where that is and direct the people to their nearest unit rather than travelling to Londonderry or Craigavon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so every member has had a chance to speak. Donald, could you maybe take down your digital hand, Donald, having contributed to this?
I wanted to second Councillor Keenan's proposal there, Chair.
Thank you, Donald, 100%. And Councillor Keenan made various points, about, perceived or real conflicts of interest, but I'm not sure if he made a proposal.
He did. He expressed he wanted to vote of no confidence in Mark Taylor. Thank you, Chair.
Through the chair, yeah, that was correct.
Okay, that's your. Okay, just seeking clarification, Eamon, because of the connection problems, is your proposal a vote of no confidence in Professor Mark Taylor, the Department of Health official who has engaged with us?
On the expertise, on the advice through his alleged expertise that he's given because of his conflict of interest in the private sector, and maybe instead of removing services, he could stick to removing gallbladders.
Okay, so we have a proposal. I'm going to come now to Correspondence Thomas McGear.
Well, Margaret Carley, just in response to that proposal, if I'm not incorrect, one of the experts that were brought on the meeting to represent the OAS case was a retired surgeon who famously referred people to a private clinic out of the jurisdiction, and when the patients arrived, the self-same surgeon appeared. So I'm very guarded in supporting this inference about one particular professional when there is an abundance of examples of professional surgeons who indeed work within the various trusts, refer people to private treatment, and it's the exact same surgeon that appears. So I'm very guarded on this one. I'm not so sure on what grounds we can support that motion. I would be very uncomfortable with it, given the catalogue of history of other surgeons that could be brought to contradict the argument.
Okay. Councillor Coyle.
Yeah, I just want to support what Tommy said there, because whilst I understand everybody's emotions about this, half the hospital is working in the private sector. A lot of our nurses are working for private companies. A lot of our healthcare assistants, a lot of my work colleagues are working for, how far are you actually, are we going to take this? And I'm not sticking up for this particular person or not, but I'm just saying, personally, I think we should, yes, ask questions that need to be asked. But in regard to saving the emergency surgery services, there's a consultation coming out in January. And like the stroke services and the consultation that took place around that, everybody around this table back then got together and got the people in that we all represent to sign it. I worked alongside people in my own party and Rosemary over there. We were in the stroke unit quite a few times during the week, and we went across the council area working together and got thousands of them complete. And I think we need to be careful how we kind of take this. It's all right criticising people, but really the work is going to be done through the consultations and getting the people of the council area to support that. And, we need to remember, this man isn't the only person that's doing this,
Okay. So people are seeking to come back in and the rules don't allow it. You make one spoken contribution of 3 minutes. I can't just waive that, willy-nilly. So we have a proposal. It has caused some concern. Members have expressed concern about the nature of the proposal, but it's still within the prerogative or gift of the proposer to persist with the proposal. It could perhaps be represented by writing to Professor Taylor, asking him to explain his perceived clash or conflict of interest, but nonetheless, Councillor Keenan still has the right to propose what he has proposed. So, Councillor Keenan, just seeking clarification from yourself.
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
As presented, Eamon?
As presented, Chair, yeah.
Okay. So members can vote for this, they can abstain or they can oppose. That's
Can I get recorded, Chair, please?
Just to clarify it, if we vote for this, are we then leading on to that, saying the same about every one that's working in Western Trust who isn't working officially for the National Health Service? Are we saying we have no competence in all the nurses in Enniskillen who's working through private aid? Is that where this is going? Just to clarify it, to see where we are going with this.
Yeah. Okay.
Chair, sorry, just to respond, I suppose, and you'd ask Councillor Keenan to clarify. So it's very specific that we would write and express no confidence in Professor Mark Taylor due to his perceived conflict of interest by his work within the private sector.
Yes, Alison. Well, I suppose Mr. Taylor never declared an interest, firstly.
Okay, just a second, Damon. I need Alison to complete this. And again, now members, you know, whenever we're all given a set of standing orders, you all know that you're allowed to make one spoken contribution of 3 minutes in any discussion. And I keep getting winks and nods and let me in again. I can't do it. I'm sorry, I have to be fair and impartial the way I run this meeting. So I'm taking guidance now from Alison. We're possibly in the area of voting on a proposal, and it has been clarified as to what the nature of the proposal is. If you could just re-clarify it, Alison.
Yes, so Chair, that we would write to Professor Mark Taylor advising that the Council expresses no confidence in him due to his perceived conflict of interest because of his work within the private sector. You had made the suggestion, Chair, that it may in the first instance be appropriate to write to Professor Taylor to advise of the Council's concerns regarding his work and to ask him to outline how he ensured perceived declarations or conflicts of interest were handled in any recommendations that came forward. You may wish to reframe it, but Councillor Keenan has declined. So that is the proposal before you.
Okay, and if a member has spoken already in this debate, please take your hand down now in the chamber and WebEx rather than create confusion. Okay, a recorded vote has been requested. So, Eamon, final opportunity. You're the proposer. You're sticking with your proposal?
I am, Chair. No confidence from the community or myself.
Okay, and it has been outlined. So we're going to set up a vote then. It has been proposed and seconded, and we're now in the process of setting up the vote. Is it ready to go? Right. Oh, I have plenty of time, but need to operate. That's I think it is. Peter, if you can advise Alison. Red. Okay. Good. All right, now, Peter, thank you. Enough time. Just missing. You're just getting 18. So, Chair, I think. Yeah, help enough. Chair, so we had 3 votes for, 23 votes against and 7 abstentions. So the motion or the proposal is defeated. Okay, thank you. Page 3 now. Right, okay. That's the 17th of November one. Okay. Okay, members, we're at the top of page 3. And again, Alison will make reference now to a letter.
Yes, Chair, just I think it was maybe Councillor O'Coffey alluded to it in his opening comments. So we've received correspondence this evening from Save Our Acute Services campaign, and it's an opportunity to request to present to the council in terms of its case for services, I imagine, for the retention of services, and also expressing concerns about the comment and the content of some of the Trust's presentation on the special council meeting. So I'm assuming chair members would wish to accommodate such a meeting with Save Our Acute Services, but that'll be the request.
Okay, and to see, my screen's a little bit clustered here.
Just closed out now.
Yeah, close that one, close that. Okay, so looking at the chamber and looking at, I think that's agreed, members, isn't it? Just take a proposer and seconder for that. Okay, Councillor Warrington and Councillor Bell. Opposed and seconded and agreed, members. Okay, page 3. I'll come now to Councillor Blake, or you're off. Do you want to come in, Paul?
I'm wondering, do we have to declare an interest as a member of Save Our Acute Services? Just to be right about this.
Right. Okay. Okay, we can note those councillors who wish to declare that interest. You know, and you have done so there now, Paul.
Yeah.
So you're one of them who has declared an interest as a member of SOAS. Okay. Councillor Keenan's doing likewise. Okay. And Councillor Gannon's doing likewise. Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell, have you a query in relation to this?
I do, and perhaps if Alison's she could answer it. My understanding of conflict of interest is if there's only a financial benefit. So just clarification.
Well, the wider definition.
No, there would be a variety of interests. There's pecuniary, which would be financial, but there would be other interests, which would be, for example, include memberships of groups.
Okay, thank you, members. So moving on then, that was page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6 and 7, and page 8. Right, Alison?
Chair, if I may, just one other matter. Following the special council meeting, there has also been a meeting of the council's disability advisory group, and they have obviously raised particular concerns regarding the impact of the decisions in relation to people with disabilities. And at the most recent meeting of the group, it was requested that the council would support the issuing of a letter on behalf of the group to raise the concerns, but also to seek clarification as to what measures in the consultation process the Trust will put in place to ensure equitable access for people with disabilities to the consultation process. So if you were content, Chair, we would just take a proposer and seconder and get that actioned.
Okay, Councillor Maguire.
I'm going to carry Molum and Rinchin. Yes, I'd just like to propose that, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. And Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Happy to second that proposal.
Thanks very much. And agreed, members. Okay. So where are we on the agenda now? We are at item 7, and we're going to confirm the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 19th of October. And as you know, this is just accuracy, isn't that right? Okay. And I'd look to Councillor O'Reilly, Correspondence O'Reilly, to perhaps propose the adoption of same, and we have to go through the 22 pages individually. Okay. Again, it's not matters arising. Okay. Page 1, 2, 3, page 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20, 21 and 22. Can I go to yourself, Councillor O'Reilly, now?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson is happy to second. Thanks very much, Errol. Okay. And moving on to item 8 on the agenda. And again, Thomas would be seeking your involvement. To confirm the minutes of the reconvened planning committee meeting held on the 26th of October. Paper D, so 12 pages, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Once again, Councillor O'Reilly.
Chair, I wasn't at that meeting, so maybe somebody else would propose.
I think you were, Thomas. The other one that you're referring to is item 12, probably.
Okay, happy to propose then.
Thank you, Thomas. And seconded by Councillor Robinson. Thanks very much, Paul. And agreed, members. Moving on then. Item 9 on the agenda. John McLaughlin, Councillor McLaughlin is our chair there. To confirm the minutes of the Environmental Services Committee meeting held on the 2nd of November, paper E. Again, page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Propose the noting of the minutes.
Okay, thanks very much. And we've got a seconder in Councillor Stevenson. Okay, thank you. And moving on then to item 10, to confirm the minutes of Regeneration and Community Committee meeting held on the 8th of November, paper F, and Councillor Buchanan is our chair there. Pages 1 to 14. 1. Okay. And so is Councillor Donnelly. I'm going to go to Councillor Donnelly first. Stephen?
Chair, just to clarify that I was present at that meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Just an accuracy, including your attendance. Well done. And Corlior McGillier, Emmett McGillier.
Yeah, likewise, it's recorded that I attend that meeting remotely, but I was actually down in the town hall for that particular meeting, so if that could be updated as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. And Councillor Baird.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. To do with attendance, I was present at that meeting, as is proven in bullet point 3, first bullet point, where I declared an interest.
In person?
Yep.
In person. Thank you, Alex. Okay. So that'll be corrected accordingly. And so that was page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Over to you, Mark. Thanks very much, Mark. You want to?
Happy to propose, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson?
That's
all right. We'll look elsewhere. Councillor Rainey has seconded. Thanks very much. Okay. Item 11, Policy and Resources, P&R. Councillor Thompson is our chair there. And we want to confirm the minutes of the P&R committee meeting held on the 9th of November, paper G. So 17 pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Harold?
Thank you. Happy to propose the adoption of the minutes of the Policy and Resources Committee.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Robinson?
Seconded.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so those are those matters dealt with. And then we're at item 12 now, 24 pages, to confirm the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 16th of November 2022, paper H, and I believe it was Councillor Maguire. Okay, this is still Councillor O'Reilly? Okay. Okay, 16th November. So we'll go now to pages 1 to 24. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So I'll look to the chair of that committee to propose.
Proposed, Chair.
Thank you, Thomas. And seconded by Councillor Thompson, as indicated. Thanks very much. And that's agreed, members. So we move on now to item 13 in the agenda, correspondence. And if you can lead us through this, Alison, please.
Yes, Chair, thank you. First item is response from the Department for Communities regarding the Council's representations about the cost of living crisis and the need to make available appropriate financial resources. And in summary, the response is advising that due to the cross-cutting nature, costs associated and so on, the future report would need to be considered by an executive, and it's not something that can be brought forward in the absence of ministers.
Okay. Okay, is that
just proposed and seconded to note, Chair?
Does anybody wish to propose to note that correspondence? Okay.
Proposed, Chair.
Thanks, Thomas, and seconded by Councillor Stevenson. Thank you.
Next item, Chair,
13.2.
is just from Armagh City Banbridge and Craigavon confirming its support of the Council's motion for justice for Noah Donoghue, and the Council has written to the Secretary of State in support of the Council's motion.
Okay. Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, Chair, my hand's up from
Problem?
this.
Okay. Councillor McAleer.
Carlock, yeah, thank you. I'll propose to note and happy to welcome that support. I do think it's interesting that one party leader responded to our motion saying he couldn't support it, and yet his party members in the ABC Council were happy enough to vote it through without raising a word of objection against it. So I think that's quite telling in terms of the lack of moral ambiguity surrounding this particular motion and the request that this council made. So happy enough to record or propose the noting, Chair.
Okay, and Eamon, can I depend on you to second that noting? Eamon, Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll second. It's great to see there is growing support for Noah and his family and the quest for justice. And I suppose, yes, the disparity between certain parties and their support for it is worrying. But yeah, I'll second it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. 13.3.
Yes, Chair, this is from Newry Morning Down Council, and this is details of the motion that Newry Morning Down had passed in relation to government assistance with the cost of living crisis, and have asked for our support.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Just need a proposer and a seconder to note. Okay. Councillor Donnelly, Stephen, thank you. And a seconder to note. Okay. Eamon and Emmett's hands are still up, so I can take perhaps Eamon as the seconder, if you didn't mind, Eamon. Thank you.
Chair,
okay.
I'd put my hand back up in relation to that one, just because it seems to be quite specific to the district of Newry Morning Down. So I'm wondering that we do support it, I have no objection supporting it, but on the proviso that it's widened out, whether it's to include the entirety of the north or at the very least this district council area. So that would be my kind of one amendment or addition to the proposal before us. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I'll ask you to explain, Alison, the procedure there.
Well, Chair, just to say, as Councillor McAleer has indicated, it is quite specific to Newry Morning Down. However, that is the adopted position of the council, so we wouldn't be in a position to amend their motion. So I think that's why just the proposal was that it's simply noted.
Okay, thank you. So if I can just ask any member his or her hand up, please, to take that down now. And we're at item 13.4 in the correspondence.
Yes, Chair, this is just from Minister Eamon Ryan, and this is in relation to the Council's concerns about the inadequacy of the electric charging infrastructure across the island of Ireland, and specifically this was around the shared island EV charging scheme.
Okay, and can I have a proposer? Councillor Bell and Councillor O'Reilly wish to speak, so Councillor Bell first, then Councillor O'Reilly.
Well, firstly, I'm happy enough to propose, Chair. But Chair, I hope you join in my outrage at this letter, because we, as a proud Oma man, I'm sure you're not going to be happy to read that we've been referred to as the Fermanagh County Council. So, well, so I thought that had to be raised. That had to be raised.
And especially when we're in Oma right now. Is that right?
But it does raise questions about the Minister of Transport and their knowledge of local government in Northern Ireland. But that's an issue for another day. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor O'Reilly.
Chair, I'm happy to second, but aside from the faux pas with the Fermanagh County Council hopping back to old days, I think more importantly is the while 15 million and 90 additional locations are good, and the idea of going into sports clubs to be able to put these infrastructure locations on the map is good. I think it's, when you think about the totality of this island, it is minuscule. And certainly, while we welcome this, I would propose, Chair, that, and although the Minister's Private Secretary has indicated it's part of a wider rollout of infrastructure, I'd be just interested in the detail of what that further rollout would be, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I never thought that the day would come when I would take in for Minister Ryan, but I would presume that the mistake that he made was he probably was listening to the council meeting from the old Fermanagh Council when I suggested for the new name of the council would entail the first 6 letters of Fermanagh and the last 3 letters of Oma.
Okay. Fred, I'd like to dismiss your point out of hand. Okay. Suitably caution you on your overall attitude. Okay. That's that. Thanks very much. Moving on. There wasn't a proposal in there as such, just a commentary, Matthew. We'll ignore most of the rest of what we heard there. Okay. But thanks very much. Moving on now to item 13.5 as correspondence.
Yes, Chair. This is the letter from Peter May, the Permanent Secretary in the Department of Health, and this is specifically regarding the Council's representations around workforce planning and the concerns that we had expressed previously regarding that.
Okay. So I look now around the chamber and I see Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'll propose the letter from Noton. I see he's very quick into blaming on the absence of a minister. Let's be honest, the minister wasn't too long out of post before the letter was written, but that's neither here or there. In the last 4 to 6 weeks, the Southern Health Trust actually took on 133 foreign national nurses from Zimbabwe and India. Now, that's 133. Why was the Southern Trust able to make that sort of recruitment, and we here in the Western Trust always seem to be, as per usual, lagging behind? I know, certainly having discussed this with my colleagues, that there is a concern over accommodation for these nurses, but you know, that is something that can be looked at if we could even get them. But you know, 133 to one trust area, and yet Fermanagh and Oma on the Western Trust area, it's a big zero. So I think that's something that needs to be taken on board and noted. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Go now to Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, it's just really in relation to the content of the letter, where Peter May notes about the on page 1, recruitment within the HSC is managed by trust directly. However, in the Health and Social Care Workforce Strategy 2026, Delivering for Our People, published by the Department in May 2018, the aim of the strategy is that by 2026, we meet our workforce needs and the needs of our workforce, with attracting, recruiting and retaining staff a key theme. So I propose that we actually go back to the permanent secretary and ask them, does he accept that this has failed and is failing out of hand? It's not serving the people of this district, the district that we represent, and what actually is going to be done in relation to that? Because we heard again the special council meeting, we heard all the talking heads from the trust and from the Department of Health putting the blame on this being a recruitment and a retention issue. If that's the case, there's a failure of management. There's a failure of management overall. There's a failure of HR management. I questioned who the HR manager was and if they were going to be speaking. They said hello, and that was the height of their contribution to the council meeting. You know, it's really not good enough. In any other business, in any other industry, this selection of management would be out on their ear because of the failings that they are overseeing. So we need to see what improvements are going to be made to serve the people of Fermanagh and save the people of Tyrone. So I'm proposing that we do go back to the permanent secretary to ask those questions and to see what he and what his department intend to do to bring some sort of relief to the people of Fermanagh and the Omagh district that are suffering at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll be fully supportive of the two previous speakers. And in light of what Councillor Warrington said, something sprung to my mind. During COVID, we did see the Henry Reeves Brigade of Cuban doctors travel all over the world, especially Italy at the height of the virus. And I do know that they are experts in many fields of medicine. And possibly, and I don't know what the Explorer, not really heard much about that, but possibly there could be a contact made with the Cuban doctors, the Henry Reeves Brigade, who do come to crisis situations like this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll have a proposer and a seconder, and that's agreed, members, the proposal that has been made. Okay, that's agreed, members. Thank you. Okay, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The policy in regard to recruitment and training and retention and the entire staffing of the NHS has been an abysmal one for many years. Probably the main issue, of course, for attracting people here is the issue of pay. We know that the pay of NHS workers in Northern Ireland was allowed to fall behind that of England and Wales until they actually stood on picket lines in 2019 and secured a commitment for equal pay with England and Wales under the Tories, if you think about it, and still behind that of Scotland. But the commitments entered into at that stage with the likes of Unison and so on were never fully followed up on. And now we have the prospect, I think, next week and next Monday of strike action involving two trade unions, NIPSA and Unison. So I'd like to propose that we actually write back to the permanent secretary here to suggest that the best way to attract nurses and other healthcare professionals is actually to address the long-standing issues around pay, in particular, a cost of living increase, and also around staffing, because if you increase pay, then you will address staffing. So we need to see safe staffing levels, we need to see decent pay levels, and we should, I'd like to propose that we write to the permanent secretary in order to support the industrial action being taken by Unison, RCN and NIPSA in this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Just to second that proposal from Councillor O'Coffey. All our healthcare workers deserve fair pay for the job they do, and they shouldn't have to resort to strike action. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Coyle.
Declaring an interest because I'll be going out on strike on Monday, but so I definitely support it. But I just wanted to make a comment because, and I'm not going to go into my own personal details, but BSO are the people that do the recruitment, and maybe it might be worthwhile. I do know that it can take a long time between applying for a job, getting an interview, and actually starting. And in my own case, it took 11 months for a permanent position. And only that I asked for certain documents and GDPR and all them kind of things that they quickly got back to me. But I'm not the only one. It happens a lot. There seems to be some kind of dysfunction within BSO as well. So I don't know. I don't think the trust are over them. I could be wrong on that. I'm not sure, because I think the Department of Health are. But BSO are the people, when you put in an application for a trust job, they're the people that deal with it. So maybe, you know, when it comes to looking at advertising staff and dealing with that, maybe, you know, some kind of correspondence from them or information from them might be helpful as well. I don't know.
Okay.
You know,
seeking
seeking clarification around clarity from BSO and what services they actually do, because it's them that deal with the recruitment, and you know,
I think they're a unit
deal
of
with it. And
I think they're a unit of the Department of Health.
they're a unit of the Department of Health,
We'll
yeah.
seek clarity around that.
Yeah, but they're the ones that employ you within the trust.
Yep.
So, you know, it's okay going to the chief executive for this, that and the other, but if he's got no say in how quick these people are employed, then we're going to the wrong people. BSO are the ones that are actually dealing with that, and
Okay,
in
you're
my experience,
proposing
they're
that
not
we
very
write a
quick.
letter to the Department of Health along those
Yeah.
lines, okay?
Yeah.
And is there a seconder for that? Seeking clarity about the function and remit of BSO and Councillor Green? Okay. Now, do you have other proposals at this time? Everything in order there. Okay, aye. Yep.
So Chair, we've a few proposals then. So we had the noting of the correspondence that we then had proposed by Councillor McAleer, seconded by Councillor Keenan, that we write back to the Department of Health Permanent Secretary advising the people strategy, recruitment strategy has failed the district, and seeking clarification what they intend to do to bring relief to the district and also regularise the staffing situation. Proposal then of Councillor Keenan, seconded by Councillor McAleer, that we would advise or make reference to the potential for the doctors, Henry Reeves from Cuba, who have provided assistance in crisis situations, particularly during the COVID pandemic, and if that opportunity has been considered. And the proposal of Councillor Coffey, seconded by Councillor Gannon, that again through the Department of Health, that advising the best way to attract and retain talent is to ensure fair pay for the jobs that are being undertaken. And then finally proposed by Councillor Debbie Coyle, seconded by Councillor Green, that we'd write to the Department of Health seeking clarity regarding the scope and extent of the BSO and the services they provide, and I suppose the timeline associated with those as well.
Okay, that's understood and agreed by all the members. Thank you very much. Other correspondence then, Alison?
Chair, there are 3 items in total, but 2 have been dealt with in the context of the agenda so far. So I just highlight the letter that was received on the 2nd of December from the Chief Executive of the Trust, Mr. Gockian. And this really is in response to the Special Council meeting. There are a few areas in the correspondence, Chair. Firstly, details on patient pathways or an update. Secondly, clarification on what would be the conditions for reinstatement in terms of the consultation on the unplanned change. Clarification in relation to comments that have been made at the meeting, which have been referenced earlier regarding the obstetrics and gynecology services. And finally, the consultation process and a specific ask or request really, that to see how the council can support the public consultation process, and references made to, for example, the use of our facilities. So those are the main areas of the letter, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Gannon, followed by Councillor O'Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'll propose the note. I'll propose the noting of the correspondence, and I have a couple of proposals to respond to them. I don't know if that's in conflict, but if it is, I'll change that. The first thing is obviously the update. It's unsurprising that it's lacking in a bit of detail. I would have liked to have seen some of these points fleshed out, and I think that's typical of what the Western Trust have been doing. It's another thing that raises more questions than it actually answers. you know, and I think it comes back to an inability to manage a situation, because they've said in this letter they've been planning this since September, and look where we are now. They're only finalising some stuff and they're not giving us the details now. But anyhow, Chair, the first issue is around the patient pathways. You know, given the questions over OBS and Guiney and the Trust's engagement with the Royal College, I'll not get into it because we've discussed it already. I'd like to propose that we write to NIAS to ask if the Western Trust has actually engaged with them. Do NIAS believe the pathways are suitable and provide timely care? And what will the impact on NIAS wait times be? Or do they have enough ambulance cover? Will there be a negative impact on their services as it stands for the area? I think those are important questions. And I know many people won't, and many people in this chamber won't take the Trust at face value when they've said they've engaged, with other bodies and haven't. The next, so that's one proposal, Chair. The next point is around the consultation on unplanned change. You know, they mentioned the regional standards. I would propose that we write to the Western Trust just to ask, how do they plan to reach the regional standards? They said it'd be difficult, but, you know, if they want to bring it back, they're bound to have some idea of where they're going to go. And I think you asked a very pertinent question in the special council meeting, Chair, where you asked them about their plans. And I think we need to keep pushing them on that. Furthermore to that, and in writing to the Trust, just around the OBS and Guiney, you know, they mentioned a few mitigations they've put in place around middle grade surgeons. My question would be, how many middle grade surgeons do they have? Do those middle grade surgeons provide full 24/7 cover? When were they hired? As in, where have they come from all of a sudden? And in terms of the private ambulance, they mentioned about the private ambulance cover. Who are these private ambulance providers? We have asked that multiple times and they haven't been able to, and many councillors in this room from across parties have asked that and they haven't been able to answer it, and they haven't been able to give guarantees on their qualifications. So we'd ask them about who are the providers that they have procured, and they've said they've procured them. They say they have them there. And my final point is around, they've mentioned about the consultation and how the council can help. I think we should make the point to them that they need a venue that is suitable for 1,500 to 2,000 people, because that's what turned out to the Save Our Acute Services event. Many of the councillors in this room turned out, and thank you to them. And I obviously have to thank the council, the forum staff who were amazing on the night at helping to manage the massive crowd. They deserve massive credit, every single one of them. So we should, in our letter, say, if you are to have a fully legitimate public consultation, have proper engagement, you need a venue for 1,500 to 2,000 people. And if that means the Trust coming up with some sort of temporary structure somewhere, I'm sure we'll help them and give them a car park or something to put that up or something to that effect. I'm sure they'll be able to look at that, because I don't know if we have it, if there are any venues in the area that meet that demand, Chair. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so looking around, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the proposals from Councillor Gannon there. Just to note that it's obviously it's middle grade doctors with surgical experience. I think he should have stated so. It's just to make sure we're correct on that. But I think the points being made there are excellent. The correspondence in front of us, really, there's a lot to it. First of all, the claim all along has been that this is not led by monetary considerations. However, it states very clearly that the letter from the WHSCT states, due to recruitment challenges and national budget restrictions, it will be a challenge to meet the second condition for the return of emergency general surgery. So there are clearly financial considerations at play. And the idea is, in the paragraph above it, is that this is now the new model that has been rolled out, the Bengoa model, supported by all 5 Assembly executive parties, is really what's happening here. There are issues. I think we have to, unfortunately, my motion, which was supposedly be for tonight, on a no confidence in Mr. Guckian, has been preceded or cut across by an earlier proposal. I recognise that, but as a result of that, we don't have the opportunity really to discuss the way in which this council has been misled. And there's evidence even in this correspondence where Mr. Guckian is attempting to correct his inaccurate statements insofar as he is now saying this should have referred to mitigation options which were developed in conjunction with, this is in regard to gynecology services and in particular caesarean sections, where he claimed that they had written to the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, but when it turned out they'd only spoken to a local representative. He also stated to our council that there were matters that needed to be discussed in confidential matters, but were, it turned out, as has been evidenced by our chief executive herself, that upon reflection, they did not necessarily. There were many of them that could have been dealt with openly and in public. He also denied any consultants had resigned over the loss of emergency general surgery, and yet it was confirmed in the press that indeed some consultants had left. And finally, he stated categorically that bypass guidance had been issued to GPs, but it was only when local journalists were asking questions of it that suddenly the bypass guidance was issued. So there are 4 cases there where this council has been directly misled, in my opinion, by Mr. Guckian. And unfortunately, we don't have an opportunity to call for his resignation. But I would like to just state that at this stage. There are a lot of questions really around the private sector ambulances and so on that we're not going to get to talk about here. But I don't have any confidence in this consultation coming up. I don't think many people in our community would. The reality is the temporary suspension of this service is going to have permanent implications regardless of what happens. And I think that we as a council should be actually turning our way from this. We need to engage with the community to find a real solution. And I don't think it's going to come from the Western Health and Social Care Trust. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And the private ambulance bit is included in proposal so far. Councillor Blake?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Would be very much in agreement with what Councillor Coffey had to say and Councillor Gannon. I was wondering if they'd permit me to add a wee bit to the letter that's going to the Western Trust, and it's regarding whether the Chief Executive, Mr. Neil Guckian, whom we've already alluded to, we have no confidence will ever deliver for this area, but it's whether there is plans in place for more theatre space in Altnagelvin, because that is going to be something that's going to be proved to be very, very difficult, because currently surgeons in the Southwest Acute Hospital operate on a rota of 1 to 6, so like 1 to 6, the 7th patient, they would go back to again. That's how they maintain their clinical skills. With a shortage then of theatre space, which will become premium in Altnagelvin with these decisions that they're doing, are they intending then to, or how do they maintain surgeons' skills when some of them could be operating in like the Royal on 1 to 22 kind of rota basis? So how do they maintain the surgeon maintain that are going to be in Altnagelvin maintain that level of clinical skills, but also then around the theatre space, which has become very premium. But and adding to what Councillor Gannon was saying as well, we want to see the clear pathway for how the Western Trust gets back its regional standards. So we haven't had any transparency from the Western Trust whatsoever. It's been absolutely zero. The disrespect that they've treated this council and the silence from them has been astonishing. But for once can actually show us some transparency as to how they meet the regional standards for emergency surgery so that they can recruit consultant surgeons. That has to be provided to us. But also then, I'd also ask them, in terms of obstetrics and gynecology, and we've already mentioned, there had been a mention there about resignations, which we know of. What meetings have taken place with the current consultant obstetricians and gynecologists in the Southwest Acute Hospital to ensure that they're not considering following a similar path? Because we saw a letter that was published in the Sunday Independent where they called it unacceptable and that they couldn't be expected to do their jobs without access to emergency general surgeons standing by. So I'd be asking further with that the trust what meetings have taken place with the current consultant obstetricians and gynecologists to ensure that they remain in post, because I can't have Geraldine Mackay in her post as Director of Acute Services telling us that there'll be no impact on any other services when she can know full well that she cannot state that categorically, that there'll be no impact on any other services. She can't state it because she knows full well that the loss of emergency general surgery will impact on other services, and they are pulling the wool over this council's eyes and the public's eyes by saying there'll be no impact on other services.
Thank you. And presume that's incorporated into the proposal. Thanks, Councillor Blake. And finally, Councillor Coyle.
Thanks, Chair. And I just want to second Paul's proposals there. And going back to what Adam said, I'm not, during the consultation period, I'm not sure if we want them down once with a building that holds 1,000 to 1,500 people. There's over 110,000 people across our council district. So I think it would be better that the council would offer accommodation across the council area to get a lot more than 1,000 to 1,500 people taking part in the consultation, that we offer as much, that we can across all our main towns and our villages. Any accommodation that the council own, that the trust can come in. And they did say, I think Tom Elliott had organised a meeting in Irvinstown where they attended a couple of weeks ago, and I attended it myself. And they did say there that they would come out to various locations across the council area. So rather than focus on one building for one meeting, that maybe if Adam's in agreement that we have that across the whole council area.
Okay. And finally,
I take the point, Chair, but I wouldn't be in agreement because they need to feel the heat and the pressure. We mentioned this earlier. And if you remember back to the stroke consultation and events like that and events around cuts previously, it was those big room events that really hit home for the decision makers. I do understand where Councillor Coyle's coming from, but it needs to be emphasised that they can do that approach, but they need to have at least one event such as I've mentioned. I would be leaning them towards that because that's the only way I think they'll understand the true anger and the true passion of people here.
okay, so I don't think we're going to divide on it as such. Councillor Swift.
Garamagat Care, I was supportive of obviously both proposals, but particularly Debbie's, because the very fact that we're so rural, most definitely the people do need to come out and see if the travel distance is such the issue. And here, I'll tell you what, we can speak and give the heat as good in the rural areas as going into a central location. So I'd be supportive of that, most definitely. We have large community centres, as you well know, you visited them on your recent Durn West tour. Gurmagat.
Thank you. Alison, if you can come in now.
Thank you, Chair. It really just builds a little on that point, and I suppose it's just specifically around the approvals for this evening, if I'm interpreting correctly. I think members in the context, at the special council meeting, it was indicated the consultation was due to commence in January. I think certainly as part of our response back, if you reminded, we should seek clarity as to what the consultation arrangements actually are. There was some discussion that it would be at least a 12-week consultation. So I would have thought the likelihood is they will wish to, again, spread out across the district. And if you were, notwithstanding Councillor Gannon's remarks that we would emphasise to them the need for big venues as well, but just for our administrative procedures, if I'm interpreting correctly, you're content that we would indicate the council's willingness to provide venues across the district, emphasis on large venues, seek to get early confirmation on the consultation arrangements so that we can start to engage with communities as well. And in that context, Chair, I do appreciate the priority this is for the council. As you know, we have a relatively small team in terms of consultations. I take it you would also be supportive that we give this our focus for the next number of weeks until the end of the consultation process, so that we can mobilise with SOAS and other groups across the district. So if you were content, I think we could respond in that vein, which allows both aspects to go forward.
Okay, members, thank you. I think that's agreed. Okay, we're going to have to move on now. Members, so we've dealt with other correspondence. Now, in relation to the meeting, we'll have 5 motions, We also have confidential business. Can we move to confidential business? Can I get a proposer and a seconder, but to be swift about this? Okay, Councillor Stephen McCann and Councillor Matthew Bell proposed and seconded. And Alison, can you help us to be hasty in moving through this? Okay, thank you. Okay. Are we ready to go, Adam? What's the story?
Just be a moment.
I really should say hurry up. That's right. Rennie, you're the vice chair. Never forget it, kid.
Councillor O'Connor.
If I decided to
Sorry.
walk out that door, you'd be up here in 2 seconds.
Come back.
Right, okay. Right. So you're ready to go then, Alison?
Just wait. Adam is ready?
Yep.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. For send for Adam, thanks very much. Okay, so we've just come out of confidential matters. I think it falls to me to say that Councillor O'Coffey dissented from the most recent item there, which was assisting the trust in the arrangements for the consultation. I think so. So that's recorded or that's noted. And then if we can go to Alison for a resume on what happened in confidential matters.
Thank you, Chair. While in committee, the Council confirmed and signed the confidential minutes of the Council meeting held on the 1st of November, the special Council meeting held on the 17th of November, the Planning Committee meeting held on the 19th of October, the Regeneration and Community Committee meeting on the 8th of November, and the Policy and Resources Committee meeting held on the 9th of November. There were no matters arising from either the Council or Special Council meeting. The Council also received a verbal update on industrial relations and the local pay dispute, and a further report should be available for the Policy and Resources Committee meeting in December, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And a proposer and seconder to note. Councillor Crawford, thank you. And Councillor Maguire, thanks. Proposed and seconded. Others wish to be associated? I can only take two. Okay. So that's that. We're going to move towards the motions. Just before we do, Alison, I want to make a quick proposal if this is in order. It's because I've been lobbied significantly about it. It's about the energy support payments. And I think just we need to take an action as a council. And it's just to write a letter till the NIO, probably in this case, Chris Heaton Harris. And it's expressing deep concern that the £600 energy support payment due to people here who are enduring severe cost of living pressures has not yet been made. And responsibility at this time, because of the non-functioning executive, does fall to the British government. So a lot of people are saying to me, and I'm sure they're saying it to you as well, that they're further concerned by the temperatures drop and winter is deepening and many families are struggling to pay soaring energy bills. And to have it budgeted for this payment being made before Christmas. A lot of people are telling us that. And this is serious stuff when you're out and about and you hear people in the community. This is really serious. I know we all appreciate this. So the final note would be calls on the British government to urgently provide clarity on the delivery of the payments well past time. And that's basically a proposal that I would like to make. Now, Councillor McCann, I'm going to let you in briefly before we go to the motions.
Very, very quickly, Chair, I'll second that. You know, it is a disgrace, you know, that people are still waiting for this payment as we go into some of the hardest days of the winter so far, you know, when people, you know, I see it day in daily where people actually are freezing in their homes, and it's hard to watch and it's shameful that we're at this position. So happy to second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baird.
Yes, I agree entirely in the context, but just on a point of accuracy, it would be the UK government rather than the British government, Chairman.
That's right. Me and you agree on many things.
Say again.
You and I agree on many things.
Oh,
There are some minor,
I'm glad you've
and there are
agreed on
some
that,
points
yeah.
of emphasis that we don't always agree on.
Thank
But
you.
thank you, Alex. But I think that's agreed, members. And I just wanted to get that in as a really urgent action from this council. Now, members, at 9:15, we'll have 5 motions. I think we will get through this business, but everybody needs to enter into the spirit of that. No lengthy speeches for the sake of it. If you agree with the previous speaker, maybe you won't speak yourself. If there's 1 or 2 motions in here that are universally agreed, then maybe let the proposer and seconder deal with it in their spoken contributions. So we can try to be sensible about how we approach the 5 motions. Now, the first motion is 14.1 on your agenda. And I'm going to go to Councillor Green to propose his healthcare motion. Thank you. Over to you, Seamus. And bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. I had a long speech wrote out, and then I decided, given the time, that I'd just do a few bullet points because I think the motion is self-explanatory. It's I admit I do not know the solution to this. I have an expertise for it. So when I was thinking of this, I thought maybe, I don't think this has been tried before. I don't think everyone that has an interest has been brought together into the one meeting and to try and come up with some kind of a form of a solution to the crisis that there is in healthcare west of the Ban, and in particular around the SWA and GP services in rural areas. I think it's a crisis that everyone is feeling. In my own particular area, where Maple Healthcare is under threat at the minute, it's just shocking, where people cannot get access to a GP. People are ending up having to go to A&E and waiting for 6-7 hours with a sick child or whatever. So, as I say, I don't know the solutions. I'm proposing that we get everyone that has an interest, and expertise, to come together to try and come up with solutions or recommendations. I know this will be a financial burden on the council, but I think it's too important for us not to try something. I think we need to think of something outside the box, because everything else seems to have been tried. I do believe that the Department of Health and the Trust have almost washed their hands of it and given up. So I'm just hoping that we can come up with some ideas and solutions and recommendations. And I know this crisis has come from, it's in the making for 12 years. It's 12 years of Tory austerity, where they have basically gutted the health service. And but we are the ones that where we are geographically that are finding the real pinch on it. So I am putting this proposal before the council, and I hope people will support it. So I leave it at that, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. I could go now to Councillor O'Reilly if he wishes to second it and speak to that.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I'm very happy to second Seamus's proposal around looking holistically at healthcare within our council area, and as Seamus has said, in the west of the Band area. I think for many more years than 12 years, the healthcare services have gradually been run down in rural areas. And I think it's shameful that all of the experts that are paid and highly educated in positions to deliver this healthcare system free at the point of a need to people are not delivering. And I think that we need, and it is unacceptable that as a local government, as a local council, we need to get into this sphere and to ask everybody to get around a table to try and put their heads together and come up with a way to deliver for rural citizens that are here today, but without their healthcare services may not be tomorrow. And certainly what we're looking at, not alone for today, but for the future of other generations coming behind us, that there is something going to be left there to be able to be called a health service, whether that is at a hospital level or at a local GP service. And certainly we've talked at length tonight about various things that might happen, and certainly when you're looking at how things are going, you see that a paid for health service on so many different levels, a bit like America, is where things could escalate to, unless we take some affirmative action now, Chair, and to try and bring those people around, along with citizens, with trade unions, and everybody that has an interest, Chair. And I think no better organisation to be able to try to do that is our own council. So happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Cormac, Thomas. I'm going to go to Councillor O'Coffey, and then it'll be Councillor Warrington. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This motion's obviously the intent of it is to try and safeguard local NHS services, but I feel that there's a misrepresentation inherent in it, like the idea that the main problem is the attraction and keeping of healthcare professionals. The problem with our NHS, and it has been a problem since it was established back in 1948 and actually imposed, despite the opposition of the then government of Northern Ireland, it has always been under attack, and that's precisely because of its socialist model, which is basically free at the point of delivery and funded through general and progressive taxation. Obviously, it is a locally accessible service as well, which is something that's always been critical to the model. But the reality is that over the last 20 years, it's been subject to the most brutal attack, and even before that, obviously, with Margaret Thatcher and so on. But in Northern Ireland terms, that has really accelerated under the consecutive executive parties that have taken over the mantle of health. There have been 7 studies, all conducted on how to reform the NHS, i.e. to advance privatisation of delivery, to increase the profits of the private companies, which are really sucking the lifeblood out of our NHS, and to therefore, the only way to manage that is to actually close small rural acute hospitals and to actually progressively underfund services such as primary care, mental health, and so on. This is policy coming out of Stormont. This is not an accident. This is something that's been engineered over time, and it needs to be fought, and it needs to be fought by working class people. We need to organise ourselves, and I'm glad to see workers taking strike action, and I'm very glad to see workers in Southwest Acute Hospital, in certain trade unions, NIPSA, actually identifying that their strike action is against the closure and privatisation agenda, which is driving forward both the Bengal process is the latest iteration, but it has now been exposed fully under the review of emergency surgery, which is really the death knell for small rural hospitals. So I cannot support this, in all honesty. This would be to cover up what's actually happening. All 5 parties have signed up to this programme, and they need to be fought. This needs to be fought because our community deserves a healthcare system that is worth that is the NHS Bevan principles. It was won by the British working class people in the Labour Party of the day after they defeated fascism. That's how we established the NHS, and it was fought against by the unionist government in Stormont of the day, and now it's been dismantled before our eyes through privatisation. So I don't think this is going to be solved by this sort of an approach. The reality is we need to overturn the dominant ideology, which is about privatisation and neoliberalism. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there's no doubt that the revelations about the Lisnaskea GP practice could be facing closure next year. It sent a shockwave through the local community. In my opinion, given the sheer size of the practice, along with the fact that it covers such a large geographical area, it is simply too big to be allowed to fail. By that I mean the Western Health and Social Care Trust should be moving immediately to reassure patients and staff that if a new contract holder cannot be found, that it will intervene and take over the responsibility of the practice. That is exactly what happened with the Dromore and Trillick GP practice after the previous minister, Robin Swan, refused to sign off a proposal for a patient dispersal there. Lisnaskea GP practice can't be allowed to close. So what patients and staff need at the minute is urgent and clarity and reassurance. The Western Health and Social Care Trust, supported by the Department of Health, are best placed to provide that. Following the increases over the last 2 years, there are now more trainees in the system than ever before. That, along with the postgraduate course at McGee, should be making it easier for the Western Trust to recruit. But there is little evidence that they're taking it seriously yet. No harm in this council convening meetings, but as long as they're outcome based. The outgoing challenge of a single year budget, however, shouldn't be discounted. Northern Ireland had the opportunity for a 3-year plan under the draft budget that closed for consultation earlier this year, but the collapse of the executive and ongoing impasse saw the opportunity squandered. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Blake.
Thanks, Chair. As already was referenced earlier in the meeting, Councillor Gordon McPhillips submitted his apologies for the meeting, but he asked me to say a few words in support of the motion. He said, I'd like to thank the fellow Erinese councillors, Councillor Green and Councillor O'Reilly, for bringing this motion to the council. As the motion states, focusing on the crisis in our healthcare in our council area, and I think we can all agree that's exactly what it is, a crisis, a major crisis. Both in our SWA and our local GP practice are a crisis point, not just in Lisnaskea, but up and down the country. I and our SDLP grouping fully support this motion and call for urgent meetings with all the relevant bodies to find solutions. The situation we have in Maple Group and Lisnaskea is extremely worrying for its 15,000 odd patients. I do welcome the Maples Group itself coming out and giving the public some much needed clarity in addressing the rumours and answering some of the questions that we all had. I have to pay tribute and express my attitude, as I've always done, to the staff working in the Maple Group practice for all their hard work and dedication. One thing is for sure, during the last number of years when things have been very difficult, I cannot fault the effort and care shown by all the staff in the Maple Group. In conclusion, we in the SDLP will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Okay.
Just to say the Ulster Unionist Party will be supporting the motion as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to thank Councillors Green and O'Reilly for bringing this motion. It's an interesting motion and I'm glad to see it tabled. It does reference the withdrawal of emergency surgical services, but I won't rehash something that we've discussed multiple times tonight already. It's well documented. But the more recent threat to Maple Group is astounding. It would be, if it were to happen, the collapse of one of the largest GP practices in the north. And that would be catastrophic for not just that area, but the entirety of Fermanagh. Where are these patients going to go? It would have knock-on impacts. And as many know, I do work in Lisnaskea, and you hear the frustrations and the stories every day. And I think actually I was chatting to Councillor Green earlier, and he was chatting about experiences people had as well, these real experiences people are having every day. You know, and it was mentioned earlier that this has been 12 years in the making. I think in particular, GP crisis has been longer in the making. You know, many doctors and health professionals and GPs have been warning about this for 2 decades, the guts of 20 years. And it has never been addressed by various health ministers. And maybe, to be fair, some did have plans, but various collapses prevented them from acting upon those plans and for us finding out. We do have to take a serious look at our health service and how it's organised and seriously consider reform. But what is very important, I'm sure everyone would agree here, is that any reform or changes to any health service needs to recognise the geography and include full access to services in rural areas. I'm sure we can all agree on that. You know, rural areas deserve as much as the urban areas, and it's something we talk about a lot. I do think the motion is a positive step, but I think it really highlights the fact that this motion's even in front of us really highlights the lack of leadership at this moment in time, because we have no leadership at Stormont. Let's be real, it's not there. We're having no leadership from the trust really on many issues, and a local council shouldn't have to do this. It just local council shouldn't be in a position that it needs to step up to do this. But I'm glad that the councillors brought this forward, because we can be the ones to provide a bit of leadership on this and a bit of initiative. But as I said, it's a positive motion, and thanks again to the councillors that brought it, and I'm happy to support, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Baird.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Like Victor has said, the Unionist Party will be supporting this, and we agree with the spirit of the motion. What I'm going to say, I hope you don't think, the proposers don't think I'm being pedantic, but if you take line 3 there, it says the threat to all our surgeries. Well, if you extrapolate that out, the threat is to all our citizens. And what just strikes me is the use of rural in two lines. Line 7 says how rural communities in Fermanagh, and then the line 11 says healthcare to all our rural people. I mean, it's both urban and rural. I know you're coming from, Seamus, and I say I'm not trying to be pedantic, but I would have thought I didn't want to put a formal motion in on it, but what could to ensure that it's all encompassing of how our line 7 and 8. How our community in Fermanagh, indeed the west of the band, can attract, and that in line 10 that all our citizens, I presume when you're talking about rural community, it's a generic term you're using for us all, but as I say, it's focusing in that way. Let's be honest, you've got Enniskillen and Omagh as major towns, and then below that in the structure, Irvinstown, Lisnaskey, Carrickmore and Fintona, and sort of they would presumably be looked on as rural, so or urban, sorry.
Obviously, you're supporting the spirit of it, but you're making a good point about definitions. No problem. Thank you, Councillor Baird. Okay, so I have 3 remaining speakers before we go back to Councillor Green to conclude. Councillor Keenan, followed by Councillor Maguire, followed by Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I believe this crisis has been a long time coming, and I believe it's a manufactured one for the reasons that Councillor O'Coffey has quite clearly outlined. I will support the motion with an open mind, and I'll take part in the process once it happens, but I will be making clear that privatisation in any form or a dual practice with private health insurance will not be acceptable and will not be on the table as an option from the community. It's no coincidence. It's not an isolated incident. Yes, this is a big practice, but up to 20 GP practices in the north have handed back their contracts in recent months. This really is the race towards something different, something new, and I don't believe it's going to be good for our community at all. And as Councillor Gannon said, we shouldn't be here firefighting on our own. It's a disgrace what's happening. And he also said that the previous health ministers haven't addressed it. Well, I believe they haven't addressed it. Deliberately because of the reasons that Councillor O'Coffey quite clearly outlined. Because this is the race towards private healthcare, private health insurance. Scotland's having the debate openly at the minute. We don't have a functioning assembly for various reasons. Whether it would have the gumption to openly talk about it's another thing. But yes, I'll support it with an open mind. There's people's health needs at risk. There's jobs at risks. Lisnaskey has been having these problems for many years now, so it's no surprise. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eamon. Councillor Robinson will be coming in as well. So Councillor Maguire's next. Councillor McGee.
I didn't intend to come in to say anything, given that the motion is self-explanatory, but given the dystopian view of some of the councillors, I thought to myself, I have to come in and say that we, as local elected reps, must represent our people using every lever at our disposal to try to get a positive response. You know, coming in with negative lectures on the state of affairs of everything, but at the same time leading a campaign to try and save services in our area. I find there's a contradiction in that, and I really have to respond to that sort of dystopian view that everything in Fermanagh and Omagh is bad, and that we just give up our responsibilities. We have to use every lever at our disposal, and I think this motion is very worthwhile of our support.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Tend to agree with Councillor Maguire. We do need to put forward the positives here as well. Our GPs are trying under extreme circumstances to provide a brilliant service to the best of their ability. They're being hamstrung by the facts that they're now being taken on a further load where they're going to have to make decisions, GP-led, where they're making decisions where patients go rather than just being able to send them direct to the SWA, which again falls back on the Western Trust. There's also services which the Federation of GPs in the Derry and Strabane Council area have got, but we still haven't got those in Fermanagh. None of the surgeries here have got those services, and they have them over 5 years now in those other areas. And I think it's a disgrace, and this is something that we as councillors need to be lobbying hard for, that our GPs have the same ability to provide the services that the rest of the GPs within this trust area. The trust pass the buck every time and say they have no responsibility for GPs, but they're quite happy to put an extra load onto them without providing them with the financial backing or the staff to assist them to deal with the measures that they're dumping on them.
Thanks, John. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to thank the two
Councillor Green, Councillor Riley for bringing this motion forward, and our party will support it as well.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Okay, so over to yourself, Seamus, maybe to conclude. And I'll just put on your light now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just a bit disappointed in Councillor O'Coffey. It's I just find what he said extraordinary. I don't think there's anything in the proposal that said that he couldn't contribute and put them points and argue them points and try to get agreement and recommendations from the group. So his dismissive manner is actually quite shocking. I believe. He's talking about saving the health service. Can I just remind him that a lot of the healthcare or the practices, GP practices, are actually private businesses. So this thing that the health service at the minute is free. Them businesses go in 20 years. They're or far more, maybe in some cases, but they're private businesses. So I'm just don't know where I'm just shocked at his attitude. I have been contacted during the week by a number, and I'll not name them, a number of healthcare activists in this council district who actually wanted to come here the night to support this motion in the public gallery, but weren't able to come for one reason or another, but who are health activists for years upon years, and I respect their view a lot more than Donald's view there on that. So I'm just a bit shocked and disgusted at what he said there. As for Alex, just to explain, I felt it very important that we did put rural into it. We are counted as the most rural council. I know there's urban areas in it and that, but we're counted a rural council. And I think it's the fact that we're so rural and that health service and healthcare has been stripped from us. I think that's why I put that in. I'm not slighting anyone living in an urban area, because they will have access to the SWA and that the same as the rest of us if we've saved these services and come up with these things. But I just felt it was important to point out the rural makeup of our council area. So just one thing that I forgot to say at the beginning was that I would hope that when we are doing this, and as Councillor Keenan said, we all need to come with an open mind to this, and nobody's views will be turned away. And that I would hope that the Department of Health and the Trust will actually come and participate in this, because there's always the possibility they will turn their nose up at this and not participate. I think that would be a shocking insult to this area and the proposal and the goodwill that we're actually trying to do. So I'll leave it at that, and I just want to thank all the councillors that actually did that was positive there on that. So hopefully everyone will vote for it.
Thanks very much. And members, I'm going to anticipate agreement here. I don't think we'll be setting up a voting mechanism. So, okay. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Councillor O'Coffey recording his dissent. Okay. Thanks very much. Okay. Moving on now till the second item in terms of the 5 motions. Again, it's a farming motion. Now, there's good unity around the supporters of the motion, reflecting maybe the agricultural subcommittee's work too, you might say. And I think we're going to be going to Councillor Swift, and then seconded by Councillor Buchanan. Again, maybe a wee bit of self-discipline within groups that maybe if one speaker would do. I can't insist on that, but at the same time I would request that. Over to you, Bernice.
Yeah, Gurmagat Cahirlock, thank you very much. And as it's clearly stated within the motion, the representative members of the Council's Agriculture Liaison Group continue to engage and voice robustly all matters of concern for our rural farmers. We've talked all night about health and the state of our health. I want to now talk about the state of the health of farming and indeed our farmers. Now, our councillor members recognise the vital contribution farming makes within our rural economy, and we praise all farmers within our district for their steadfastness to continue with their businesses, all of which we recognise is wholly deserving of our continued help and support, but more so the help that is needed from central government and wider, who are failing the rural farming sector. And having listened to the many voices from the citizens within this sector, and indeed during our frequent agricultural meetings, we know that it's not without serious challenges. And it is with the facts and knowledge borne out within our motion that we all came together in an agreed effort to help our farming community. We cannot allow the continued failures of central government to become acceptable, hence the rationale to draft our carefully written motion covering the demand for investment for our local farmers, seeking additional funding to assist within the cost of living crisis, and indeed the Brexit uncertainties, along with being treated on a very level playing field with the basic area payment. All of these matters are fundamental. Our farming community are all too aware of the climate change crisis, and it is incumbent on government ministers and officials alike to ensure there are no more budgetary constraints for our local farmers who require our support, ensuring their safety, their contentment, and indeed their effectiveness. And I'll hand it over now to the seconder. Guramagat.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Chair, and very happy to second the motion this evening very briefly. It has been agreed by all the members of the Agriculture Liaison Group and fully support it. And of course, in Fermanagh and Omagh, farming is at the heart of local communities, a very important part of our council area, and this needs to be recognised, and they need the support to continue this. It's vital that the farming community receive support, and I believe this motion states clearly what we hope to achieve and what they deserve. And I trust that there'll be full support in the chamber tonight for what's before us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. And I'm going to take the remaining speakers in this order. Eamon, I'm just going to check, have you your hand up for this item? Or is it maybe there from a previous item, Eamon? Councillor Keenan? Okay. Eamon, if you could perhaps take your hand down in that context then. I'm going to move on to Anthony Feely, followed by Rosemary Barton, followed by John Coyle. And I go now to Councillor Feely.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for that, Barry. Yeah, and I just want to say a few words in support of this. I know my name's added there. As Bernie said, we did agree to this in the Agricultural Liaison Group at our meetings, but we're going through a very tough time at the minute. You know, for all the farmer community, as Mark has said there, and myself as a hill farmer, we've lost a lot of payments in the last couple of years, and myself and Seamus have been on the campaign for it to get the ANC money back, and we never got it back, but we're still fighting for that as well. It's just the cost of feeding and diesel and fertilizers shot up so much, and it's just we're just at the brink at the minute, like, and everybody is struggling. As I said before, when we do get our single farm payment, the most of it is already spent on an overdraft and paying our bills, and we're just struggling to get it for. It's a long time for another 12 months to get more money, you know. And the price of cattle came back a wee bit this last month too as well. They were good at the end of the summer and early autumn, but they're starting to slip as well, which isn't helping the situation as well. So we do need some financial help, and just happy to support the motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak in this farming subject matter this evening. It's widely recognised, I think, here from a number of speakers that Fermanagh Omagh Council is one of the most rural within Northern Ireland and has the greatest number of farm holdings. To be precise, just over 5,000 farm holdings in Fermanagh and Omagh. So as a council, of course, it is beholden on us to support 20% of Northern Ireland's agricultural base, the greatest percentage of any council area. The agricultural community cannot be forgotten, be a forgotten member of our community, who work 24/7 for sometimes very little recognition. We should be immensely grateful for their contribution to society, particularly during COVID, ensuring that there was no shortage of high quality produce available for us. However, there are still many challenges in the agri-food sector. While agricultural funding, particularly the basic area payment, is in place until 2024, the uncertainty thereafter is something that we will have to be cognizant of, particularly if there's a change of government. The continuation of some of the iniquitous regulations as a result of the protocol are something that are going to have to be addressed or must go. For example, the improvement of the breeding pool of sheep and cattle and this 6-month rule involving the movement of breeding stock from GB into Northern Ireland has to be removed, or it will eventually have an impact on the sustainability and quality of our livestock. Also, the difficulties of the importing of seed potatoes and grain seed from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Further, the agricultural sector have presently the added concern of the increased costs of fertiliser, meal, fuel for machinery and electricity, and other indirect rising costs from the ancillary services, such as increased veterinary costs and contracting costs. Representation must be made by the Permanent Secretary through lobbying to the Westminster government that during the Brexit negotiations, it is very important that the relaxing of state aid is achieved to help the agri-sector deal with the additional costs, whether it be as a result of the present cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine, the increased financial burden that will be needed to address environmental issues or the other challenges previously mentioned. And continuing to highlight the first-class agricultural products produced, insurance must be sought that this industry, that is the backbone of Fermanagh District Council, will receive the necessary financial support to underpin the sustainability of farming businesses for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Barton. I'm going to go now to Councillor Coyle, John Coyle.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank Bernice for proposing this. It has been fantastic to work with the members of the Agriculture Liaison Group in bringing this forward. Fully support the motion as laid out, because in Fermanagh and Omagh we have family farms. They are passed down from generation to generation, and they are not factory farms. It accounts for a large proportion of the agricultural output for the sector in Northern Ireland, and we have to be cognizant of that. Over this last 12-18 months, higher input costs have crippled farms and put stress on finances, as trying to work out for 12 months and keeping everything paid, and people like to be promptly paid. I will always stand up for our local farmers and our farming families, because it is they are putting high quality food on our tables. As Councillor Barton had said there, yes, there is certain parts of the protocol that needs to be changed for breeding stock and seeds and such like, but we have to have an agreed position. Far too little has been done in this last number of months to become, to change this, and I want a fully agreed UK-EU agreement. The climate change, a lot has been levelled at the farming industry for climate change, but airlines and transport get away lightly from certain quarters, and we will play our part when it comes to climate change, but the government needs to step up and help and support farming families to achieve the best outcome for us and the environment. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I want to support this motion again as an example of how the parties within this council can work together in cooperation and come up with proposals and solutions for all sorts of things. Usually the only time you hear tell of councillors in newspapers and that is when on maybe the 5% time when we disagree. But on 90 or 95% of the time we agree, and on this particular thing all parties have signed up to this proposal and are supporting it. I can see or foresee people maybe when they see tell of the single farm payment and things like that, people maybe will be scratching their head. There's the farmers again, there's them, they're only thinking of themselves. But could I remind people that the farming community is made up of farm families. That's our constituents, our citizens. The money farmers get goes to hardware shops, goes to rural employment in quarries, in steelwork businesses, builders, joiners, plumbers, farm contractors, fencing contractors, clothes shops, agricultural shops. It contributes to the cheaper food that we get in our supermarkets. There's all sorts of things that affects every single person in this council area that we all have to thank the farmers for. And when the day comes that the food industry is the same as the energy industry and that we're left at the mercy of the international markets and everything to feed ourselves, will be a sad day, because we have the best food industry in the world on this island, and but we're under attack. A lot of people are criticising the farmers and blaming the farmers for all sorts of things. But I would like to support this motion and to support our local farmers and our rural communities and their families. And that's all I have to say on it.
Okay, thank you, Seamus. You're making me think that we should take some sort of creative initiative, in the new year to convey that message externally as well. But okay, I think Councillor O'Coffey may be the final speaker before I ask Bernice to sum up. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, and obviously we all support the farmers who are certainly under a lot of pressure at the moment with the input prices, as has been stated. I'm not sure that this motion really deals with the issues. My understanding is, oh my God, the issue I understand is what's been proposed is that we seek further transfer payments to the sector, and that's really to repeat what's happened over the last period, and it's unknown really whether that's actually changing anything. It's certainly not increasing productivity at the rate that the UK government or European Union has sought. I do note that the Family Farmers for Action has a proposal around guaranteed gate prices exceeding input costs, which would actually reduce or eliminate the need for dependency for farmers, and that's something I think we should be working towards. So that's an alternative model as opposed to transfer payments. There are a couple of questions really to ask the proposer on top of that, insofar as even this goes. The first is whether I see the issue of additional financial assistance for environmental initiatives. My understanding is that existing financial assistance is it's cross-compliant with environmental measures. And the way it's written, I'm just wondering whether that would mean that only the additional financial assistance would have those sort of compliance aspects. And I think most citizens would be quite concerned if money was being provided that was not connected or made attached to cross-compliance conditions around environmental initiatives because of the ongoing pollution crisis that we have. The other issue is really what was raised by I think it was Councillor Barton, who I welcome to the chamber, but she did state that we need to see a move away from state aid rules. Now, that may or may not be the case, but I think we need to consider the implications of a move away from state aid rules. State aid rules were written in to the Brexit Protocol agreement as a mechanism to prevent barriers being imposed to north-south agricultural trade. And the idea that, you know, if we move away from state aid rules mandated under the Brexit negotiations, then I think you will see barriers put in the way, further barriers put in the way of Northern Ireland produce going into the European market. And I'm not sure that that is something we'd want to see as a council. So those, if maybe those issues could be addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all the members who contributed to that debate. And I'm going to go to Councillor Swift if she wishes to make a few points to sum up. Bernice?
Yeah, Goramagat Cahirlock, and I would like to thank each and every individual who has participated and contributed positively to the farming motion, and I emphasise positively to the farming motion. And again, we in the Agriculture Liaison Group attend regularly and wholeheartedly to address all of the issues for our farming community. And I must stress and reassure other members who have some doubts as expressed that we don't just make this stuff up ourselves. We consult and we engage the stakeholders and we listen to the farming voice and we reiterate and we hold our agendas accordingly to address all of the issues. So I can hand on heart with the assurances of all the other agricultural members who are much more professed than I am that we have indeed come up with a robust motion agreed by everybody that addresses the issues of concern out there. And once again, I'm glad that Rosemary, with her participation there, will make a very good replacement for Councillor Wilson, and welcome you formally, Rosemary, and glad to have another woman on board on that to give again the female farming voice to all of the issues addressed. So just in conclusion, Cahirlock, we are seeking to address all of the issues with the Permanent Secretary in the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs to invest in the local farmers, and again call on the Prime Minister to guarantee the farming industry and rural communities the same levels as other areas. And we conclude with that. Gurmagat.
Okay, Mahu, Bernice, and again, members, I anticipate consensus within the council for this motion. So I don't think I'll be putting this to vote. So the motion as proposed and seconded, I think meets with the broad approval. Councillor Coffey's recording his abstention in this matter. Dissent, it was abstention, yeah, abstention in that case. Okay, so agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Now, again, just do I need to take a proposal? Not just yet. Another 10 minutes, so we can go to 10:38 or 10:40 or whatever. At 10:07, I'll seek a proposal to go the extra half hour. 3 remaining motions, and again, you know, just a wee bit of self-discipline in terms of helping us to time manage the remainder of the meeting. So, support for university students is our next motion. 14.3 on your agenda, proposed by Councillor Armstrong, Diana Armstrong, and seconded by Councillor Matthew Bell. So over to yourself, Diana, to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologise for not being in the chamber this evening, and I hope this is a non-contentious motion. We will keep it brief. Members, we all know the drastic impact COVID has had on students in terms of disruption and their mental health and well-being. And now some local students are coming to me raising their concerns about the timetables which they only receive on their first days at university. When the students receive their timetables following arrival on campus in September, it's not unusual for them to find that they only have 8 to 12 hours in-person lectures per week, with private study time and blended learning making up the rest of the coursework. These students are faced with yearly accommodation costs of roughly £5,000 in university accommodation, compared to approximately almost £7,000 for a 40-week contract in private student accommodation. For an average household in Northern Ireland with an income of £29,000, the maintenance grant is available up to £4,900, but with the cost of accommodation absorbing 100% of this, very often students are left with approximately £29.30 a week to live on. Parents, where incomes allow, will be required to contribute to additional living costs or other sources of income, and often it'll fall to the student, him or herself, to take on part-time work to supplement their income. Some local students have reported to me that they've secured annual tenancy agreements only to realise on arrival at university that they have a lot of free time which could be spent at home with reduced living costs. However, if local universities were required to produce timetables to coincide with their letters of acceptance, this would permit undergraduates to plan their study days on site by travelling from home to attend the small number of in-person lectures on their course. By doing so, they'd be saving on the considerable full-time weekly expenses and would be able to complete hybrid learning and study days at home, alongside taking on any part-time employment to supplement their living costs. At present, once a student has been notified of their place on a course, they are under immediate pressure to secure accommodation in a very crowded market. The university population in Belfast is around 39,000 students. Queen's has 3,500 central student rooms available, and the UUJ has 407 bedrooms in their new campus in Belfast city centre. Naturally, first-year students are given first option on university accommodation. However, it's clear that the demand for affordable accommodation for students outstrips the supply. There remains both persistent and numerous issues with students being able to access affordable and quality accommodation across Northern Ireland. The lack of supply was especially evident with issues last summer, where Queen's University was oversubscribed to the point of being unlikely to supply any lodgings to students within a 40-mile radius of the city for the 21-22 academic year. So I believe that with the early release of timetables, new students especially can decide whether to commute for their studies or continue to face the escalating costs already outlined. Taking the above points into consideration, timetable planning, the lack of supply of affordable and quality student accommodation, and hybrid learning from home, I propose that this council calls upon Queen's University and the Ulster University to embed hybrid learning where possible, so students can have the best student experience without being encumbered with unmanageable rental and living costs, particularly in this time of the cost of living crisis and racking up huge debts before completing their studies. I look forward to hearing members' views, and I hope that you can support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Armstrong for bringing this motion forward. She highlighted very well the issues facing some of the students and had lots of facts and figures to back up everything she said. In preparation for this motion, I spoke to the university officer within the Ulster Young Unionists, who is very aware of this issue and is lobbying on it. So this motion will do a lot to support him in his effort. Essentially, the issue is when a student receives a letter of offer from the university, they are largely blind. And I remember receiving my own in 2018 from Queen's University. You don't know your timetable, you don't know where you're studying. And as from someone who had barely stepped foot in Belfast before going off to university, it's quite daunting, to be honest. And you also don't know how many hours you have. So I personally had 8 hours of study a week in university, on the campus. And 8 hours is very hard to justify paying over £600 a month at the cheaper end of accommodation. But the university is also partly to blame for this pressure for students to take up halls, because I remember being bombarded with emails for that period of time before receiving my timetable of there is limited halls, there's limited space, get it now, get it now, get it now. And I became under a lot of pressure to take up accommodation. Now, this isn't to say that students from Anonoma shouldn't be living in Belfast. There's other reasons. They might want the lifestyle, might want to experience city life, or they might want to get away from home. But this motion very simply wants to make sure our students have the best information available and are informed before they sign contracts, which will cost them thousands upon thousands of pounds. So thank you, Chair.
Okay. There are a whole lot of positives in there. You know, it's a cost of living issue, the way you've outlined it. Thank you very much. Councillor Feely.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and first I'd like to thank Diana and Matthew for bringing this motion to us for the university students. And it's Diana has explained it very well. And funny, some of the issues she came up with there, I would be getting the same kind of issues there for the students. I'd be representing myself from Garrison, Belcoo and Derrygony. That is a lot further away from Belfast and some of the councils living up the other side of Enniskillen. So it's and I've came across that, and my own daughter went to college last year, so issues was coming up as well. So it's good. I know it's good, as Matthew said there, for them to get the experience of being away from home, and of course the social life up there, which they enjoy too. But it's good for them to have a choice that they could do it online if they wanted to. So I would be, and especially as you said yourself, Barry, with the cost of fuel and the cost of the accommodation. Like a lot of students out have to buy a wee car, drive up and down, and then pay the accommodation up there. And a lot of them has got jobs for the summer and weekend jobs. They can be busy, like, but it'd be good to have the choice. So our party will be supporting the motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. As has been said, there is a cost of living crisis at the minute as well, and any changes that could help people to save money in a constructive way and in a way that they want and doesn't impact them negatively is to be seen as beneficial. You know, the costs of rent and all other associated bills have went through the roof, but in that time, for students, haven't really went up. I know myself, when I was at university, I was working 3 jobs to fund my way through it, and that was at a time when costs were lower and the wages haven't increased that much since then. So there has been a point here, but this could potentially reduce some demand, which would be beneficial for all the students. It would reduce a bit of pressure on that university accommodation. There is one flaw in this motion, and it's that many contracts for accommodation are signed as early as January, February, March, and I didn't propose an amendment because there was no real way to fix that. I don't think you're going to be able to feasibly get a university to publish its timetable for the next academic year, whilst it's only halfway through the current one. But any benefit, there could be a potential benefit, in particular to first-year students here, which is the greater intention of the councillors proposing it. Councillors Armstrong and Bell is to benefit any students who could, and maybe when you're in second, third year, fourth year, or beyond, you're a wee bit wiser to where you are, and you kind of know your rough hours, and you can ask, and you have that link in. But so this could have a benefit for, in particular, students entering their first year. But welcome the motion from the 2 councillors. Anything to try and help people is beneficial, Chair, in my opinion. So happy to support. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I have 4 remaining speakers. I would call for brevity if that's appropriate to do that. At this juncture in the meeting, then, I would take a proposer and a seconder for extending the meeting. Councillor Crawford has proposed. Have a seconder. Councillor Stevenson, thank you. Okay, so the meeting will be extended for half an hour. Remember, we have to complete this motion, which I know there's total support for, and then we'll be moving into the other 2 remaining motions. They're both important. So, as is this one. So, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And can I first of all thank Councillor Diane Armstrong, Councillor Matthew Bell for bringing the motion forward. I suppose us, as we live in the west of Northern Ireland, it makes perfect sense. It's just not to do with COVID or the COVID times. If you're only studying at university for a short period in the week, a lot of it doesn't really make sense that you have to stay there for the full week and pay a lot of money for your accommodation. So there's really 2 parts, I suppose, to that motion. Just want to say, and you said you wanted brevity, and there'll be brevity. It'll be. I just say on behalf of the Democratic Unionist Party grouping, we will support the motion.
Thanks very much. That's great. Errol, and then next up would be Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think that this motion is, as Councillor Gannon has stated, probably going to have only a marginal benefit at best. There are additionally some concerns around the idea that people should be encouraged by dint of economic necessity to actually study at least a portion of their academic career at 3rd level institutions at home. There are consequences to that in terms of educational attainments. We know that. And I think the main problem here really is that we are in a world where, unlike the generation before me, and certainly unlike my generation as well, young students are really being lumbered with colossal debts, and it is the critical cost associated with rent that we're talking about here. But grants used to cover rent. Grants used to cover, in fact, your grant used to cover, before my time, it used to cover your books, whereas a student actually would access not only the dole, but housing benefit to cover their income and expenses and their overheads. And and there was no fees. And if you tell that a young student that was the situation in the 1970s, they will literally stand agog. But we need to go back to that standard, because at that stage we had the highest level of social mobility that the UK has ever had. People coming from a working class background benefited tremendously from having access to university educations and the experience that brings with it. And the social mobility actually created a cohesion that is, we don't have it anymore. The idea that we're going to encourage people, I have no real major issue with the idea of early release of information, but it's woefully inadequate when it comes to what's happening to our students. We should not be really encouraging students to study from home. We should be encouraging them to have the money to actually pay for a decent accommodation. The university should not be making that a private profit aspect and substituting underfunding themselves. And I don't think that this motion really touches upon that, but I will support it. But I think it's a tangential issue.
Okay, thank you, Donald. And final speaker in this debate will be Councillor Campbell.
Very briefly, just on reflection, in light of the reference to, I suppose, the delivery of HE, which would obviously have an effect on partnership institutions, and working on the foundation degree with University of Ulster, I declare an interest, but was happy to sit here and listen to those fors and half against in relation to the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. And finally, over to Councillor Armstrong for summing up.
Thank you, Chair. And it was interesting to hear some of the recollections of recent students and some not so recent, and I would be a not so recent student. But thank you to members for all your comments. And I would reiterate it is a choice we're offering. It's where students want to make informed decisions. It's not mandated. But I do note that in England, there are a lot of lectures are being delivered in recorded format. That is going a bit further, really, than what this motion calls for. But I do appreciate the support within the chamber. Thank you for all your comments and for pointing and for all the contributions and observations made. Nobody would want to deny students the university experience. It's looking for a solution there, and this is where students will determine their own choices. But it's calling on the universities to release that information earlier in time to allow those students make the informed choices. And I did note what Councillor Bell said, the pressure that's put on students to get accommodation, and that has to be questioned as well. So I thank everybody for the comments this evening. Thank you, Chair. That's really all I have to say now.
Okay, thanks very much. I was just thinking there, Diana, too, when Matthew was talking, can you imagine your 8 hours, 8 formal hours, how much of a bonus it would be if they were on a Monday and a Tuesday, if you knew something like that, instead of a Monday, a Thursday and a Friday, that type of a thing. So it's a very, very good, relevant motion. And I'm just going to anticipate that everybody's in agreement with it. Okay, members, agreed. And thanks to the proposer and seconder. Okay, so we're now at item 14.4. As you know, there's 2 remaining motions. One deals with mining operations, etc. And the other one deals with A5. Both very important. Let's get them done. So with that, I'm going to go to Councillor McGill-Ear to propose 14.4. Over to you, Emmett.
And I'll take the motion as read at present. I suppose, firstly, just to deal with the latest smoke and mirrors PR effort from Flint Ridge or Galantis or Roma Minerals, whatever name they're going by this week, in relation to an email that was circulated to all councillors just under an hour before this meeting began. The so-called statement or press release that was circulated as far as I'm aware, hasn't appeared in any press or media that I am aware of, and I've contacted a number of journalists locally and nationally who have been actually following this story, and they are unaware of it. So I'm wondering just where that actually emanated from, where it came from. And secondly, I suppose the matter of fact is that the judgment was damning, and ultimately that's what forms the basis of this motion. The legal judgment is a permanent record, and if Flintridge disagree with it, then they can go to the Court of Appeal, which to date it would appear that they haven't, I suppose, and that's making note of, despite them initially rejecting or contesting the charges that were levied at them. I noticed too that they don't touch on the mass explosives issue, which this motion covers, and I'm querying maybe why that is. As the judge presiding said, corners were cut. That's the end of the story. If this is an issue that they're now claiming to take seriously, have they referred any of the previous management for investigation, given they apparently instructed and stood over the safety feelings, or were they just allowed to slink off quietly? And again, I would query, I suppose, the notes that they have recruited a team of senior mining professionals and established new safe systems of work. How, if that is the case, has that helped on the ground when this is a company that couldn't even be bothered closing their gates in the evenings? And indeed, there's evidence, video evidence of people walking around, members of the public walking around the main tunnel in Cavanagh. Returning to the actual judgment which was handed down, and that damning judgment I talked of, Flintridge had exceeded the proper use of explosives in firing 5 blasts when they had permission to blast no more than twice. This in turn then caused the serious collapse of the mine, including a 150-ton section of rock landing just a couple of metres from an employee. While Flintridge failed to respond to this incident with the necessary urgency or seriousness, the collapse continued over 2 days. A further collapse of a ramp while an employee was driving a machine on it resulted in the member of staff having to scramble from the vehicle out of the machine through a broken window and then out of a hole in the ground to actually escape to safety. Continued failings of the mine involved an inrush of 860,000 litres of water into the tunnel over a period of 60 minutes, with workers having to flee for safety, and again the judge commenting narrowly escaping drowning. A major disaster was averted simply by good fortune, as there was a complete failure of management. No proper risk assessment has been carried out, and a document put forward by the company in the aftermath of the incident was described in court by investigators as worthless. I refer also to the April 2020 judgment of Justice Humphreys, which noted it should be a matter of grave public concern that the mining works at this site have been characterised by repeated breaches of planning control, which have resulted in no enforcement action being taken by the relevant authorities, including the unlawful removal of 500,000 tonnes of rock from the site that was back in the period 2008-2009. The Ombudsman later found that failure to take enforcement action had completely failed to protect the public interest. In the same judgment, he also said that Omar Minerals was guilty of a further breach of planning control, which did not result in any timely enforcement action. It would seem that, despite a well-known history of flouting of planning requirements, first the Department and now the Council rely on complaints being raised by members of the public before considering whether or not to take enforcement action. The matter is not determinative of the application, but the court is satisfied. So really, in terms of the implications of this, is it has a direct implication on the council as the local planning authority. We're the ones that stand to take the brunt of this. So I'm making the call tonight that we actually proceed as outlined in the motion with the 3 recommendations, and that we get rid of this blight that's within or on the outskirts of the county town of Tyrone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McAleer. And moving now to the seconder of the motion, Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm proud to second this motion tonight and to give voice to the anger that people in Cavanagh feel. Where economic regeneration has been advertised, our people have been deceived. Where environmental safeguarding has been pledged, we have been failed. And where professionalism has been guaranteed, we have had outright careless incompetence. Now, nowhere has this been more ably demonstrated when in making the decision to fine Flintridge £120,000 for failures in health and safety. Judge Sherrod noted the company failed to put measures in place of recognised standards within the industry and failed to take appropriate action when the matter first arose, allowing breaches to subsist over a number of days. Corners were cut. Now, I want members to reflect on those words. Corners were cut. This is a company that is responsible for handling explosives. Indeed, in this particular ruling, Judge Sherrod maintained that 150 tonnes of falling rock missed a worker in an underground shaft by 2 metres after what he described as too many explosives being set off. Cavanagh has a problem, and the problem is a company that has in the past struggled to protect its own workforce, never mind the environment in which it operates. Chair, as I understand it, when the fine was issued, Flintridge requested and received a 6-month period in which to pay it. For all the talk of significant investment, if a gold mining company requires half a year to cobble together just over £100,000, I would suggest that they are maybe operating on a shoestring budget. This matters as well, because in respect of potential long-term environmental remediation costs, Flintridge have not put up an appropriate financial guarantee, which is normally in the range of millions for this type of project. In 2013, the independent hydrology consultant Atkins, during processing of the underground mine planning application, advised NIEA that post-closure contaminated mine water will generally find the path of least resistance, and this will be provided by the mine workings themselves, shafts and flow paths through the backfilled open cast workings. The result of such flow paths is the potential for long-term acid rock drainage at surface, as seen in many abandoned mines the world over. And I stress that, as seen in many abandoned mines the world over. So what if a company that potentially is already in financial difficulty continues to be in financial difficulty? What if a company that has cut corners before cut corners in the future? The public out there know full well who will end up paying the bill as a result. In conclusion, I'm aware that the Chief Operating Officer of Galantis Gold contacted councillors tonight to suggest that this motion is premature and that we should strive for accountability. My response to that is that we have had almost 2 decades in Cavanagh to assess this behaviour, so this is far from premature. But I do agree on the importance of accountability, which is why I urge this council to finally hold this behaviour to account. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. What is clear, this is a shocking catalogue of failures around health and safety. The risk to workers' lives is clearly intolerable and must be a huge concern to any of us. It appears that this company is engaged in a cavalier approach just to make as much money by cutting corners as has just been stated. This is what happens with corporate toxic mining, and I just think that this is a very well worded and thought through proposal. I'm very happy to support it. The issue is the misuse of explosives. This is an issue that this council has raised repeatedly, and the way in which it is actually subsidised at the cost of frontline policing budgets, but also wider public services. And I particularly want to support the idea that this company's explosives permit is cancelled, and indeed that we need a proper consultation from the PSNI on a review of how mining companies are being facilitated in general. And I think that this we have to ensure total cost recovery. That's the very minimum here from these sort of activities. But when you actually listen to the detail of what's just been recounted there, you can only be filled with a sense of revulsion at the kind of corporate irresponsibility that we're seeing from these companies that are being facilitated against the will of the local community to actually make huge profits from this toxic industry. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. Thanks, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, I think it's important to note the judgment from the Crown Court. Following an investigation by the Health and Safety Executive, the court found that there were serious failings by the operator. We must respect that investigation and judgment handed down by the Crown Court. As the operator pleaded guilty, we expect them to fully comply with the judgment. However, this motion is asking us as a council to wade in on top of an investigation and court judgment to cease the operations of the mine and to cancel planning permission. If you follow the logic of this motion, then for any other industry that is subject to a health and safety executive investigation and court judgment, that we as a council should act as an additional judge to that industry. The Health and Safety Executive or the court, to my reading, has not recommended that the council revoke planning permission and impose a closure on this operation. So why are the proposers of this motion trying to undermine the investigation and court judgment? My understanding was that the Health and Safety Executive carried out their investigation in 2018. Surely it would make sense to get a view of an up-to-date health and safety standards at the mine. This motion is leading us down a very dangerous legal cul-de-sac, which is not the first one that Councillor McAleer has tried to bring this council down. If this motion is passed tonight, our council solicitor or planning officers need to make it clear what the full ramifications for this council are if it revokes planning permission, the recourse the operator has, and financial compensation this council would be liable for. The 2011 Planning Act allows for the revoking of planning permission, but also has provision for the application to applicant to be contested. Our grouping will be no way supporting this motion this evening and will not be supporting it in any shape or form. It sets a dangerous precedent, and we respect the investigations carried out and the recent judgments handed down by the courts. It's unfortunate that councillors McAleer and Donnelly do not share that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I fully support the motion. I think that the previous speakers quite clearly outlined this company's putting workers at risk, it's putting the environment at risk, and it's all in the name of profits. This can't be accepted. Councillor Warrington there, is saying that the courts have not, directed us to take any course of action. But surely it's within our remit to make our own decisions and to protect our community, and that must be paramount, the protection of our community and our environment. So I think we are within a remit to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, well, just on what Councillor Keenan said there, is it within our power to cancel planning permission and withdraw permits, discharge and other operational permissions? Is that within our remit? Just to clarify.
Okay. I think we'll answer that in a second, Seamus. I want to bring in Mary Garrity, Councillor Garrity, and then I'll go to Alison for procedural guidance on how to deal with this. Okay, Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair. And funny, I was on the same vein as Seamus before I continued any more commentary on it. And I don't want to go into what I want to say until I get that clarity. As point one of the motion that I'm concerned about, and I don't know if Philip's on the line or where we are with that, but legally, I think, and without speaking fully on it, because I want to speak after Alison's advice, we're not in a position to lose money down a legal route. Just as a council, we have a cost of living crisis. We have to strike a rate now next year early, which is going to be very difficult, and that's where I'm coming from. But so if Alison could clarify our position on point one, particularly of the motion, and that we wouldn't be open to some sort of challenge, because I will further elaborate if I get that clarity, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Alison.
Yes, Chair, very briefly, I suppose the first thing is if the council were to adopt the motion and there were specific actions to the council as the planning authority, we would be reporting those to you separately. But in summary, Chair, my understanding is it's extremely limited and unlikely that the council would be able to revoke planning permission in this instance. But we would wait till we have an approval, and we would report detail through to you when that review would be complete. We would need to undertake a review of the existing permissions that would be in place in our role in those. There's obviously a number involving other statutory agencies as well.
Okay. So where are we now in terms of procedure? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair, and I just want to follow up on what Victor said, and just maybe have it on the record that if planning permission is revoked, that the peoples who plan permission is revoked will can go down the line of seeking financial, getting money back. I forgot compensation. That's the word, and I'm assuming it will be the council that pays it, and not the Storm Executive.
Okay. Councillor Gannon.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Just in terms of what Alison said there, she mentioned about if this motion was passed, there'd be some sort of review of what we have to do. Would then that be brought back to council for a decision, and therefore no decision would be taken on withdrawal, technically speaking, tonight, because that would have to come back to us for this consideration? And the other question I do have is if we have council solicitor available, because I'd like the full legal position before I'd make a concrete decision, because there's a lot of stuff that was said I 100% agree with, but I would like the legal formalities. Thank you, Chair.
And to receive that legal advice, we would need to go into confidential matters. Do I have a proposer for to go into confidential matters? Councillor Blake and Councillor Gannon has seconded. Okay, that's agreed, isn't it, members? That we're going to do confidential matters. Councillor Thompson seconds. So, Adam, if you can reinstate the public aspect of the meeting. Taking a vote. Oh, aye. See the final motion, we'll move that. Councillor Campbell, just so that you know. Okay, thanks very much, Adam. Okay, so Alison, can you do a resume, please, of what happened in confidential matters?
Well, just to say, Chair, while in confidential business, the council received legal advice in relation to some queries that members had posed, and specifically in relation to aspect 1 of the motion before members at item 14.4 on the agenda.
Okay, and I think I'm going to take one final. Okay, proposer and seconder to note that. Okay, Councillor Maguire and Councillor Donnelly. Okay, proposed and seconded. Okay, and that's that. Okay, one remaining speaker wishes to comment in public. Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, let me in again, and I appreciate the legal advice the council has just received from Philip Kingston in that confidential slot that we had. As a result of that legal advice, we would have issue with point 1 of the motion. Absolutely, we completely are not in support of what has happened within this industry and the failings that have went on, but I do believe it's for other departments to take lead on it. We as a council have went against legal advice previously. We have we will feel the financial gain of that, I believe, in the future as a result of not taking heed of that. That's something you need to learn from as a council. This motion has come in good faith, and it is definitely a lot of the motion I agree with, but point 1 of the motion puts the council at a precarious situation, in my opinion, and from legal advice would maybe indicate that as well. And therefore, with the situation that lies ahead of us, and I'm talking about the cost of living or striking of the rates, we need to be very careful in what we do in the future so that we're not opening ourselves to legal challenge. And for that reason, we cannot support the motion in its entirety because of point 1 of the motion that might lead the council into some sort of difficulty, which we cannot let happen again. And we need to learn from any mistakes we have made and going forward be very prudent as an organisation within this district. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go now to Councillor McAleer to sum up.
Yes, Chair, just first of all, I'll call for a recorded vote. And secondly, I have a lot of notes written down here, but I'm very aware just of the time and conscious of the time, so I want to get this concluded tonight. There's 2 points that I will speak on though. Clearly, Councillor Warrington in the notes, or whoever's provided him with those notes, there's a misunderstanding there between an investigation and a prosecution. There's no investigation. The investigation has been completed. The court has handed down a prosecution, has handed down a judgment. So rather than countering the court, this is actually supplementing the court's judgment, the guilty judgment that they found of this company, this toxic company. And secondly, I would say shame on those councillors that constantly go off on one about the issue of surcharge, solely reserved for issues when it comes to mining. Those same councillors are happy enough to blindly back funding of £750,000 to consultations and consultants without any detail and without any information on that. Yet when it comes to protecting and looking after the health and well-being of local people within this district, they then start to penny pinch. I think that's actually disgraceful, and that's particularly reserved for the UUP and SDLP members who constantly speak out when it comes to issues affecting the people of my DEA and the people affecting the right across this district council area. I think it's completely disgraceful. It's disingenuous what they're saying.
I'm going to go to a recorded vote, Emmett, to get this carried out. Would that be appropriate? Okay. I need your cooperation here to move to a vote. So we need to set up a vote, members, on the proposed motion as presented. So again, we'll be depending on our IT people to set up the vote. It may even be set up. It's about to be. Okay. Okay, over to Alison now for the result of the vote.
Okay, Chair, there were 14 votes for, 16 votes against and 1 abstention, so the motion falls.
Okay, thank you, Alison, for that. Now, as we approach the conclusion of the meeting, I need a proposer and a seconder to hear the A5 motion in the Policy and Resources Committee later this month. Councillor Crawford has proposed that course of action. Councillor Bell has seconded it, and that's agreed, members. So thanks very much, everybody. The meeting has ended.
Thanks, Chair. Good night.